Hey everyone, how are you all doing? It's me again, Mr. Paranormal M. This is my favorite time of day, sitting down with the mic and hanging out with you. My butt's a little sore from sitting so much, but honestly, I'm just happy knowing these spooky stories help you relax and fall asleep. If you've had any strange or mystical experiences, don't be shy, send them in. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our new videos. Alright, go ahead and turn on your nightlight, and let's dive into tonight's supernatural stories together. So, let me tell you this story the way it really lives in my head. To give you some context, this was back in 2020, right in the middle of the COVID madness. I was serving as a Latter-day Saint missionary in the Philippines to Cloban mission. About 4 months into my mission, I got a transfer call. I was originally supposed to serve in Baybay City, Leyte, but because of sudden lockdowns, all the borders were shut. No buses, no boats, nothing. I just couldn't get there. Another missionary was stranded for the same reason. Since neither of us could reach our assigned areas, the mission office put us together in this sort of temporary companionship and reassigned us to the San Rafael ward into Cloban City. From the beginning, that reassignment felt off. During the actual transfer announcement, there was no companionship assigned to San Rafael at all. The area wasn't even mentioned. Then, a few days later, out of nowhere, we were told, "Elders, you're moving to San Rafael." We didn't really question it. We just did what missionaries do. You go where you're called. Here's the thing, San Rafael had always been a sisters area. Then suddenly, it became an elders area. No explanation, just a quiet switch. The apartment was a 2-story house. Upstairs, there were 2 bedrooms. The one we used was fine after we cleaned it up. Just your typical missionary room. Beds, study desks, scriptures everywhere. But the other room felt like time forgot it. The air was stale, thick in a way that made you want to breathe shallower. Dust covered the floor and the closets. There were old hangers on the clothing rods, like someone had once hung their proselyting clothes there and never came back for them. It looked like no one had entered for years. Downstairs was a dim living room where the curtains only let in this weak, tired kind of sunlight. Beside it was a small dining area, then the kitchen and laundry space. The bathroom was tucked inside near the back, small but usable. For the first few weeks, everything was normal. We studied, we prayed, we did online teaching. We laughed about our awkward sublano, just regular missionary life in a pandemic. Then one night happened. I was in the kitchen washing dishes after dinner. We'd just finished a video call with some members, and then my youngest sister called me. Let's call her Laura. I propped my phone up against a cup in front of the dish rack so she could see me while I scrubbed plates. Behind me were the stairs and the dining area. The apartment was pretty quiet, just the sound of running water and her voice through the speaker. We were in the middle of this light conversation. She was telling me some funny story about online school, when she suddenly paused. "Kuya?" she said, her voice shifting a little. "Ilang kayo diyan?" "How many of you are there?" I frowned. "Dalawa lang," I answered. "Just me and my companion. There was this tiny silence on the line. And then she said something that made every hair on my arm stand up. Ang dami kasi ninyong nakaputi. Because there are so many of you wearing white. I stopped scrubbing. I remember the water still running, my hands halfway in the sink. There were only 2 of us in the apartment. Yes, we were both wearing white undershirts and our garments. But she said she saw many people, all dressed in white, moving behind me. I turned around slowly. Nothing, just the shadowed outline of the stairs, the quiet dining table, and that still heavy air. No movement, no figures, no one. He tried to brush it off, mumbling something like, "Baka guni-guni lang yan." Maybe she was just imagining things. Then he closed his planner a little too quickly and said he was tired and headed upstairs earlier than usual. The moment he went up, the atmosphere changed. It's hard to explain, but it felt like the air got heavier, like the room was suddenly smaller, pressing in on me. My instincts were screaming that I wasn't alone, but I didn't have anything visible to point to, so I did what I could. I finished the dishes, turned off the lights, and went upstairs. I tried not to think about Lara's voice repeating in my head, "Ang dami kasi ninyong nakaputi." A few days later, my curiosity got the better of me. I started gently asking around during our member visits. I wanted to know why San Rafael, which had always been a sister's area, suddenly became an elder's area. I had this uneasy feeling that the abandoned room and the closed apartment weren't just about logistics. Eventually, one older sister in the ward, Nanai Tess, I'll call her, opened up. She told us that back when sister missionaries lived in that same apartment, strange things were already happening. One evening, she said, she went over to deliver dinner to the sisters. It was already getting dark. When she reached the gate, she noticed that the living room lights inside the house were off, so the whole first floor looked dim from the outside. But through the front window, she could clearly see several figures dressed in white standing inside. They weren't talking. They weren't moving around like normal people. They were just standing, facing in different directions, still. Thinking the sisters were home with guests, she called out to them from outside the gate, "Sisters!" The moment her voice broke the quiet, the figures suddenly ran, all at once, toward the stairs and up to the second floor. But here's the part that really bothered her. There were no footsteps, no creaking, no sound at all. Just the motion of them going up, and then silence. Startled, she stayed outside the gate, clutching the food container. A few minutes later, she saw the real sister missionaries walking down the street toward the house, just arriving from proselyting. They hadn't even reached the gate when she blurted out, "Akala ko nandito na kayo kanina. Ang dami nyo sa loob, nakaputi." When she told them what she had seen, the sisters went pale. They looked at each other, and then one of them quietly said that they had been experiencing things inside the apartment too. That's when they shared their side of it. One night, they said, they were upstairs, getting ready to go down and use the bathroom before bed. The door of that abandoned room, the dusty one, was slightly open. As they walked past, they suddenly felt this heavy, unsettling presence, like someone was watching them from inside the dark. Curiosity and fear mixed, and they glanced toward the doorway. That's when they saw them. Several pale faces, expressionless, peeking from the darkness of that room. Not one face, but many. Just there, half hidden, looking at them. They froze. Every instinct screamed at them to get out of the apartment. They decided to run downstairs and just get outside. But as they hurried to the stairs and reached the middle landing, they stopped dead in their tracks. At the foot of the stairs, in the living room below, more figures in white were standing there, silent, watching. No faces they could recognize, no emotion, just that awful stillness. Then, one of the figures twitched, like its body was getting ready to move toward them, like it was about to climb the stairs.
When they finally told Nane Tess what they had experienced, the details matched what she had seen from outside that same week. Figures in white, silently moving up the stairs. A few weeks later, our mission president decided to temporarily pull the sister missionaries out of that apartment and move them to a different place while they sorted things out. And that's when they started sending elders into the area instead. Elders like me and my companion. When we heard this story, everything suddenly lined up. My sister seeing many people in white behind me through a video call. The member seeing multiple white figures inside the apartment running upstairs without a sound. The sisters seeing pale faces in the dark room and more figures at the base of the stairs. The descriptions were the same. The silence, the white, the stairs. I remember sitting there on that plastic chair in the member's house, my hands resting on my knees, trying to look calm. But my heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My companion and I glanced at each other, and we both did that nervous little laugh that doesn't actually mean you're not scared. It's just what you do when you don't know what else to do. That night, on our way back to the apartment, we didn't talk much. We still prayed, still studied, still did everything we were supposed to do. Outwardly, we were normal missionaries. But inside, there was this quiet fear sitting between us, like a third companion we hadn't invited. Even now, years later, I still remember that video call with Lara so clearly. The way her voice shifted. The way she sounded uneasy but honest when she said, "Ang dami kasi ninyong nakaputi," because there are so many of you wearing white. The strange thing is, I never saw them myself. No matter how many times I looked over my shoulder, it was always just shadows and still furniture. But after hearing what the members saw, and what the sisters went through, and remembering what my own sister said that night, I can't help but wonder, maybe, just maybe, she really did see something standing behind me. Something that chose to show itself to her, but not to me. And that's the part that still gives me chills. Not what I saw, but what I never got to see at all. I honestly believe I was possessed by multiple spirits that night, not just one. It felt like they were taking turns, like my body was a room they were walking in and out of. It started past midnight, around 1 a.m. I was at my friend Lena's place with a couple of our other friends. We were just talking, laughing, nothing heavy. Then suddenly, I noticed I couldn't move the way I wanted to. It was like my body stopped listening to me. My thoughts were there,
but my memories felt foggy. Not gone, just out of reach, like they were behind frosted glass. When I tried to talk, the words felt stuck. Lena would ask me something and I'd answer weirdly, or too slowly, or not at all. I remember really wanting to sit down because I couldn't walk properly. When I tried to move toward the couch, it felt like I was gliding instead of walking, like my legs were underwater. Then this strange wave hit me, a kind of déjà vu, but a lot deeper. It was like I've lived this exact moment before, but I knew I hadn't. There was this huge emotion rising up inside me, and I had no idea where it was coming from. My eyes kept half closing on their own, and I couldn't sit up straight. I kept touching my hair, adjusting it, tucking it behind my ears, just doing something with my hands because my whole body felt wrong. I wanted to cry, but I didn't even know why. That's when I realized, this isn't just me. I felt this presence, like someone else was sharing my body. And in that moment, I just knew this spirit had been assaulted. I didn't see any images clearly. There were no spoken words. But there was this heavy, wordless knowledge in my chest. She was a rape victim. The pain, the shame, the fear. It wasn't from my own life, but I was feeling it like it was mine. After a while, the feeling shifted. My hands and feet suddenly turned ice cold. I remember rubbing my fingers together because they felt numb. I started burping over and over, even though I hadn't eaten anything heavy or had any soda. It was so strange and honestly embarrassing. Then, all at once, terror slammed into me. I became absolutely convinced someone was going to stab me. Not in some vague, anxious way. It felt specific and immediate. Like any second, someone was going to burst in with a knife. The fear didn't feel like mine. It felt like I was remembering someone else's last moments. I think that was another spirit entering. Someone who had died from being stabbed. This spirit was panicking, sure that someone was outside, ready to come in and attack. During this time, I couldn't respond to my friends at all. They kept telling me, "Hey, breathe. It's okay. You're safe." But I couldn't calm down. My heart was racing, and my body felt like it wanted to run, but I couldn't move properly. Eventually, Lena said, "Let's just put on a movie and then crash for the night. Maybe you're just tired." So we stood up to go to her room, and the moment I stood, the fear got even worse. We passed this big standing mirror in the hallway, and I caught my reflection. For a second, I didn't recognize myself. Then I saw my own eyes again, like I was slowly coming back. I could feel the spirits pulling away, slipping out, and I started to feel a bit more like me. My body felt more under my control, but there was still this heavy discomfort, like emotional bruises. I could talk to Lena again, respond to what she was saying, but I felt fragile, like if someone breathed too hard, I'd shatter. When we reached the bedroom door and she opened it, everything twisted again. I kept saying, "I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm really scared." Over and over. They kept telling me, "It's just your imagination. Calm down. There's nothing there." But I couldn't. The fear felt too real. And the thing is, they still had no idea what I was experiencing inside. To them, I probably just looked like I was having a breakdown. We decided not to stay in that room. We went back to the living room and sat down again. They tried to make the atmosphere lighter, just talking about random things, telling stories, laughing a little, pretending everything was normal so I wouldn't spiral more. I mostly stayed quiet, just listening. That's when I noticed a huge moth clinging to the ceiling, barely moving. It felt out of place. I glanced at Lena's pets. She has this orange cat named Momo and a small black dog. Momo was sitting completely still, staring at a spot near us like something invisible was standing there. The dog kept pacing between us and the hallway, tail half up, half tucked, acting both playful and uneasy. In my mind it clicked. They're seeing something too. Animals are sensitive. When they act strange for no reason, I always feel like they're reacting to something we can't see. By then, it was around 4:30, almost 5 in the morning. The sky outside was starting to lighten just a bit. As it got closer to dawn, I slowly felt myself returning more fully. My body felt like mine again. I could breathe more normally. The cold in my hands and feet faded, and the thoughts that weren't mine grew quieter. But pieces of the night kept replaying in my mind, like short clips on repeat. The heavy sadness, the stabbing fear, the red room, Momo staring at empty air. Now, it's been a full day since it happened, and my feelings are still all over the place. I feel sad because I honestly think there are souls that are stuck, still carrying their pain, still looking for a way to be heard or helped. I feel worried because I don't know why they chose me or why I can feel them so strongly. And I feel scared because this isn't the first time something like this has happened to me, and I'm afraid it won't be the last. But I'm telling you this because I need someone to hear it and not immediately call me crazy. Even if you don't fully believe in spirits, just believe that what I felt was real to me. And that night, for a few hours, I truly didn't feel like I was alone in my own body. You know, I always tell people I wasn't a UFO person before this happened. I'm a nurse. My name's Maggie, and I've worked hospice for most of my life. Back then, I was a hospice RN, doing 12-hour shifts at a small 10-bed inpatient unit in Mesa, Arizona. That night I was driving home to north central Phoenix, same route I always took, heading west. It was one of those long, bone-tired nights where your feet hurt, your heart is full, and your brain is just trying to get you home. The highway was under construction, so it was this annoying pattern. Off the freeway, over the overpass, back on again. Stop, start, merge, repeat. Somewhere around Tempe, halfway between Mesa and Phoenix, I took an exit like I was supposed to and ended up on this little construction road. There was a big pile of construction debris, dirt, broken asphalt, gravel, pushed up into a kind of ramp. I eased my old pickup up onto it to get some height, thinking it might help me see what was going on with traffic ahead. By the time I stopped, I was high enough that one of the freeway streetlights was just a couple of feet above my head. I left my brights on and put the truck in park. And that's when I saw it. Out in the sky to the north of me, coming toward where I was, there was this massive boomerang-shaped object. Not a little light, not a dot, a thing. The glow of Phoenix behind it kind of backlit the outline, so I could see the shape more than anything at first. This huge V, just gliding in. It was around 8:30, maybe closer to 8:40 at night. The sky was clear. No clouds, no storm, nothing that would explain what I was seeing. I got out of the truck. I don't even remember deciding to. One minute I'm sitting there, the next I'm standing in front of my truck, looking up like a kid at a planetarium. The craft kept coming closer, and as it did, I could see that underneath it, in several spots, 5, maybe more. There was something that looked like lava dripping down. The best way I can describe it is like a lava lamp turned upside down. This thick, orange-gold liquid light would stretch down, thin out to a yellowish color, form a bulb, and then pull itself back up into the craft, over and over. It wasn't just light shining on it, it was the light. As it got closer, I realized just how big this thing was. The tip of the left wing passed right over me. If I had to guess, I'd say it was maybe 30 feet above my head. From one tip of the boomerang to the other, it looked about a mile wide. I know that sounds impossible, but that's what my eyes were telling me. With my headlights on and the streetlights so close, I could see the bottom really well. The surface looked like a gunmetal gray, kind of a matte finish with just a hint of reflection. Not shiny like chrome, more subdued. It looked like one solid piece of material, no seams at all. And it was covered in oval indentations, maybe 6 feet long or more each, thousands of them. They caught the shadows from the dripping lava on one side and the light from my truck and the streetlight on the other. So as the craft moved, all those shadows shifted and danced. I remember being scared for a second that this lava was going to hit me, that it was going to burn me alive. It looked that hot. My brain kept saying, "Get behind the truck, Maggie, move." But I couldn't. I was rooted to the spot. Then I noticed something else. There was no heat, no sound, no rumble, no wind, no smell. Just stillness. I thought about ducking behind the truck again, but I just couldn't take my eyes off it. This wasn't like anything I'd ever seen in the sky. Not flares, not a plane, not a helicopter. Nothing. When the craft was directly over me, everything turned orange. My truck, the dirt, my scrubs, my hands, even the air around me. It was this deep, rich, soda orange glow. Like orange crush, but darker, more saturated. And it wasn't shining out from a bulb somewhere. The light was coming from that liquid itself. As it moved overhead, I noticed that trailing behind the paths of the lava were these streams of colorful mist. They followed along the same routes, like delicate ribbons in the air. They glowed too. Layers of rainbow colors, sparkling gently, waving like flags in slow motion. And it was when that mist passed over me that something happened I still have trouble putting into words. I was suddenly overwhelmed with a feeling of home. That's the only word that really fits. Family, love, acceptance, gratitude, peace. It hit me all at once, like someone opened a door inside my chest and poured a warm, gentle wave straight into my heart. I just started crying. Not out of fear, out of recognition, relief. I don't know. I stood there sobbing quietly, watching this enormous, silent, glowing craft float over me and away toward the west, feeling like someone kind and ancient had just leaned down and checked on me. I felt like I was being told, "You're seen, you're loved, you're not alone, we're here." And I believed it. I must have stood there for 10 minutes, just watching, until it was too far away to see clearly. Even when it was gone, that feeling stayed, like a soft hum in my body. Later that night, Around 10, I was back home in north central Phoenix. I walked outside again and saw a second set of strange lights out near South Mountain. Those looked different, more like stationary lights hanging over and in front of the mountain. I was too far away, and there were trees and buildings in the way, so I didn't get a good view. But I knew they weren't like the liquid light I'd seen earlier. Over the years, I heard other witnesses talk about that night. Some said the craft was rooftop high. Where I was, it really did feel that low. I was almost parallel to it, seeing it from the side, not just from underneath like a lot of people who were looking straight up. Pilots talked about another craft earlier that evening, way up at 10,000 feet, estimated to be 8 miles wide. I didn't see that one. I only saw this one. Since then, people have recreated what they saw with CGI. And there's at least one animation out there that matches that boomerang shape and the glowing mist almost exactly. When I saw it, I thought, yes, that's it. That's what I saw. I ended up sharing my story on TV and podcasts. I'm on a Discovery Plus show, UFO Witness, Season 1, Episode 5. They had an actor play me, which still makes me laugh. They didn't get the indentations on the bottom quite right, but they did a pretty good job with the orange glow. I've also talked about it on a few shows on YouTube and some UK and Canadian programs. It still surprises me that this one night, driving home from a shift, became something I'd be talking about decades later. I'm 71 now, still in Phoenix. I still work as a pediatric hospice RN. Over the years, I've done podcasts about some of the things I've seen with my patients. Their spirits, the things that happen right before and right after they pass. I've got a little YouTube channel. These days it's mostly me talking and cooking, called Aunt Maggie's Kitchen. That's my quiet corner of the internet, because here's the thing. I think about that sighting every single day. Not in an obsessive way, just in this gentle, background way. Like a favorite song you hum under your breath without realizing. The feeling that washed over me that night. Family, love, acceptance. That's never really left. And for someone who spends her days walking families through death and grief, that kind of peace is a gift. Whatever that craft was, whoever was behind it, in that moment, I felt like they were saying hello. And somehow, that hello has stayed with me ever since. Okay, so I want to start this off by saying I know how this is going to sound, but I promise I'm not making any of it up. I'm not trying to exaggerate or freak anyone out for fun. I do believe in the paranormal, but I'm also the kind of person who will bend over backwards trying to find a logical explanation first. I moved into my current apartment back in May, so it hasn't even been that long. And honestly, it's been great. It's cheap, it's quiet, barely any bugs. Like, I've only seen maybe one roach this whole time, which is a miracle for this town. For the first couple months, it was totally normal, cozy even. But the last few weeks have been different. So, my boyfriend, his name's Eli, works late and sometimes ends up staying up when he gets home. About 2 weeks ago, he was sitting on the couch in the living room, just scrolling on his phone around like 2:30 or 3 in the morning. I was already asleep in the bedroom. He told me that while he was sitting there, he suddenly heard scratching at our front door. Now, the way he described it really got to me, because he said it sounded exactly like when I mess with him. Sometimes, if he's in the bathroom too long, I'll drag my nails lightly down the door just to annoy him. And he swore it sounded just like that. Same rhythm, same pressure, same everything. Like I was standing right outside the front door, drawing my nails down it over and over. At first, he thought it was me. Then he realized I was in bed. He said it went on for a solid minute or two, off and on. Finally, he got annoyed and a little weirded out, so he stood up, walked over, and opened the door. The second he opened it, silence. Nothing there. Our apartment building backs onto this scraggly little strip of woods and a drainage creek. So my first thought when he told me was, okay, raccoon, stray cat, a possum, something like that. We've had raccoons around here chasing people for food before, so it wouldn't be the weirdest thing. But here's the part that sticks in my brain. There's not a lot of time between the scratching and him opening the door. Like, he's only a couple steps away. For whatever was out there to make that specific sound and then disappear without him seeing even a tail or hearing footsteps, it just doesn't totally add up for me. I brushed it off though. I was like, yeah, creepy, but it's probably an animal. Then about a week ago, I was home alone at night. Eli was at work. It was just me and our cat, Miso. I was sitting at my desk in the bedroom doing my own thing when, suddenly, the bedroom door slammed shut. And I don't mean it just swung closed. I mean it slammed like someone was on the other side and was absolutely pissed off. It shook the frame. I froze. For a second, I literally thought, oh, Eli must have come home early and is messing with me. It would be exactly his sense of humor to sneak in quietly and slam the door just to see me jump. So I get up, heart pounding, open the bedroom door, and the apartment is empty. Living room? Nobody. Kitchen? Nobody. Bathroom? Empty. I check my phone, pull up his location. He's still at work across town. At that point, I start trying to logic my way through it. The bedroom doesn't get the best air circulation, so I'm like, okay, maybe it's air pressure, maybe a draft, maybe a window. But here's the thing. In all the time I've lived here, that door has never slammed shut by itself. It doesn't even really close on its own. It only ever slowly swings open if you leave it cracked. And then, today happened. This was literally less than half an hour ago. I was sitting at the table eating dinner. No TV on, no music, nothing. Just me and the sound of my fork on the plate. It was one of those weirdly quiet moments. Out of nowhere, I hear a cat meowing. Not a cute little feed me meow. This was a distressed meow. The kind of sound a cat makes when it's locked in a closet or trapped somewhere and really wants out. It sounded like it was coming from the bedroom. So immediately I think, oh my God, I shut Miso in the bedroom. It happens, right? So I push my chair back to go let him out. As I stand up, I glance over at the armchair in the corner of the dining area, and Miso is right there, curled up asleep, completely passed out. He hasn't moved. The meowing is still going. At this point, every hair on my arms is standing up. I grab my phone and call Eli because I am genuinely freaking out. And I swear to you, the moment he picks up the call, the meowing stops. Just stops. Cut off mid-sound. I walk through the whole apartment while I'm on the phone with him. Bedroom, closet, bathroom, under the bed, laundry area, nothing. No cat, no noise, nothing weird I can see. Our windows are closed, no electronics are on. There's nowhere an animal could realistically be hiding without us noticing. So then I start thinking, okay, maybe it's someone else's cat. Apartments are weird. Sound travels in strange ways. Maybe it's the people next door or above us. But that's the thing. Layout-wise, the only people with cats near me are the neighbor across the hall and the guy diagonally above. There are no units that share a direct wall with my bedroom. It didn't sound muffled or distant either. It sounded like it was inside my place, like inside that room. And when I realized that, standing there in the hallway with my sleeping cat in plain sight, everything just kind of hit me at once. The scratching at the door, the slamming door, and now this phantom cat sound. So that's where I'm at right now. Eli's working late again, and I'm going to be home alone until around like 2:30 in the morning. And I'm sitting here going over all of this in my head, wondering if I'm just tired and jumpy, or if something is actually off in this apartment. I don't necessarily need someone to come in and say, "Yep, your place is haunted, congrats." I just need to know I'm not losing it. Like, if you told me, hey, maybe you are experiencing something weird, but you're not crazy for noticing it, I think I'd honestly feel better than being told it's all in my head. Because the scratching, the slammed door, the cat that wasn't there, I can't shake the feeling that something else is here. And I really, really wish I had a neat little logical explanation to wrap this up with. But I don't. So, I don't talk about this much. In fact, I don't think I've ever really told anyone this story before. But hearing other people share similar things made me think, okay, maybe it's time. I was about 9 years old, 3rd or 4th grade, somewhere around there. It happened only once, but it's one of those memories that is so clear, it might as well have happened last night. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, for no obvious reason. No nightmare, no loud noise. I just opened my eyes. And the very first thing I noticed wasn't anything I saw. It was what I felt. There was this overwhelming sense of peace, deeper than anything I'd ever felt in my life. It was like every worry, every tiny fear, every little knot in my chest just dissolved. If you've ever had a warm hug from someone you really love and trust, take that feeling, multiply it by 100, and then stretch it out so it kind of fills the air around you. That's the closest I can get to describing it. It honestly felt like I was standing in a piece of heaven. My whole body felt light. I remember lying there thinking, this can't be real, right? So I actually pinched my arm. Hard. I winced, and that tiny sting told me, nope, you're awake. This is happening. After a moment, I sat up and swung my legs over the edge of the bed. My room was mostly dark, just a faint line of streetlight slipping in through the curtains. But the darkness didn't feel heavy or scary. It felt soft. That's when I saw them. On the other side of the room, near my little bookshelf, there were these small figures moving slowly through the air. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but then I realized I knew exactly what they were. Angels. I didn't question it. I didn't wonder if I was imagining things. It was like something inside me just recognized them instantly. Every night before I went to sleep, I used to pray, "God, please send your angels to watch over me while I sleep." So when I saw them, it felt like God was gently saying, "See, I heard you. I've been here the whole time." There were 3 of them, maybe a 4th a little farther back. It's hard to be sure now. They were small, about the size of a cat or a little bigger. Almost like how you'd picture fairies in an old storybook. They wore pure white clothing that wasn't flashy or fancy, just simple and perfect. And they moved in this slow, graceful way, like they were gliding through water instead of air. Each one had wings, white like doves. The feathers weren't sharply outlined, more like soft shapes made out of light. Their faces, it's hard to explain. They had features like humans, but not quite. They didn't look young or old. It was like they were outside of age altogether. Timeless. My room itself was dark, but I could see them clearly because they were the ones giving off light. It wasn't a harsh light. It didn't hurt my eyes. It was gentle, like the glow of candles. If candles could breathe and move and love you. What struck me was how calm I felt. I wasn't scared, not even a little. I didn't feel the urge to scream or run to my parents' room. Instead, I had this deep, instinctive sense of what I should and shouldn't do. On the little desk beside my bed, we had this old tablet, one of the early ones my dad used mostly for emails and games. I glanced at it and immediately thought, I could record this. I could prove this is real. I could show everyone. But right after that thought came another one, even stronger. Don't. I also somehow knew not to get too close. It wasn't that they were dangerous. I didn't feel any threat from them at all. It was more like standing near a beautiful painting in a museum. You don't want to smudge it or mess it up. So I stayed where I was, a few feet away, just watching. Time felt strange. Part of me feels like it lasted only a moment, and another part remembers it like a long, quiet stretch of time. If I had to guess, maybe 10 minutes or so went by. The angels moved slowly, gracefully, almost like they were weaving patterns in the air. I didn't hear them speak with words, but the whole room was filled with this silent message. You are loved. You are safe. We are here. At some point, I folded my hands together without even thinking about it. I bowed my head and whispered a little prayer, thanking God for letting me see this, for letting me know that He really was listening to my childish bedtime prayers. When I lay back down, that peace settled over me even more deeply. I've had trouble sleeping for as long as I can remember, tossing and turning, my mind refusing to shut up. But that night was different. I remember how unusual it felt to just close my eyes and drift off, almost instantly, like I was being carried. The next morning, I woke up to my regular life. Sunlight through the curtains, my mom calling me for breakfast, school books in my backpack. I got dressed, ate, and went about my day like nothing special had happened. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell my friends. Not because I was afraid they'd think I was crazy, but because at that age, my faith in God was so simple and unquestioning that it didn't even occur to me that it needed explaining. Of course God had sent angels. Of course He listened when I prayed. Of course He was real. To my child mind, what I'd seen wasn't impossible. It was just God being God. It's only as I've gotten older and gone through seasons of doubt and struggle that this memory has become more and more precious to me. There are days now when I wrestle with questions, when faith doesn't feel effortless, when life feels heavier and more complicated. But then I think back to that night, 9-year-old me, standing barefoot in the dark, bathed in that soft, holy light. And I remember, and I understand a little more why Jesus said you have to become like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. A child doesn't overcomplicate it. A child doesn't demand proof the same way adults do. A child just sees and trusts. That night, I was a child who saw the unseen and simply believed. And that memory of the peace, the light, the silent assurance that I was loved is something I know I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. So, this was last year, Saturday, May 11th, the day before Mother's Day. I had an early shift at the clinic, one of those weekend front desk things, so I got up before everyone else. The apartment was completely still. No TV, no kettle, nothing. I did my usual routine, brushed my teeth half awake, grabbed my bag, checked the locks, turned off the hallway light. Everything normal. I remember actually pausing for a second at my bedroom door, making sure it was pulled shut, then heading out. By about 11:30 that morning, I was already a few hours into my shift. It was one of those slow stretches where your brain has too much time to think. My mom, Elena, texted me about something personal. Family stuff. The kind of topic that already had a lot of emotion behind it. We started going back and forth. You know how text arguments are. No tone, just guesses. I could feel myself getting annoyed, and I finally sent back, "Yeah, legally." That was my way of tapping out. Short, final. Like, I'm done with this. A couple minutes later, she replied, "Huh? I'm up in the attic nook if you want to talk." I just texted, "I'm at work." And in my head, that was that. I pictured her upstairs at her little reading spot and me at the clinic, and the conversation just cooling off. What I didn't realize was how that message landed on her side. To her, it felt like I had just stormed into my room after arguing. Like I'd snapped, "Yeah, legally," at her through text, and then shut my door in real life. So things stayed weird that night. I ended up crashing at my partner's place instead of going home. I figured some space would be good. The next day was Mother's Day. When I came home, the whole place felt softer, brighter. You know that quiet that feels like everyone's decided not to fight anymore? It was that. Mom was in the kitchen making tea. We did that awkward little dance of, "Hey, morning, want some tea?" And after a while, we sat down at the table to actually talk about the argument. That's when she told me what happened. She said that after I sent, "Yeah, legally," She got upset and decided she didn't want to do it over text anymore. So she came downstairs to my room to talk face to face. She told me she stood outside my door and knocked. Just a regular knock, not angry, just firm. And as soon as she knocked, she heard me moving around inside. She said she heard the floorboards creak, the soft sound of my steps crossing the carpet. She even saw the shadow of my feet under the door, shifting like I'd just gotten up from my chair. So she called my name. And this is the part that makes my stomach flip every time I think about it. She said my voice answered her, overlapping with her own. Same depth, same rhythm, same annoyed tone I use when I'm over a conversation. According to her, I said, from inside the room, clear enough to feel the vibration through the door. Yeah, legally, Mom. Yeah, legally. The exact words I had texted her. She said it wasn't kind of like me. It wasn't distant or muffled like someone in another room. It was my voice. Right on the other side of that door. Same bass, same timing, same attitude. She got mad because as far as she knew, I was in there, ignoring her. So she turned around, went back upstairs to her little attic corner, and sat there, stewing, thinking I was being childish. And then her phone buzzed. That's when she saw my text. I'm at work. Not, I'm going to work. Not, heading to work. Just, I'm at work. In her mind, that meant I had just walked out. Like I'd been in my room, talked back to her through the door, and then left the house right afterwards. And she just stopped. She replayed it out loud. The knock, the footsteps, the shadow under my door, the weight of my steps on the carpet, the way the light in the hallway changed when my feet moved. My irritated voice saying, yeah, legally, Mom. The same way I always do when I feel cornered in a conversation. Except I wasn't there. I was standing at a reception desk in a different building, wearing a name tag and answering phone calls. We just sat there for a moment, both of us kind of quiet. I could see her trying to line up the timelines in her head. Like maybe she had got the time wrong. Maybe I was joking, something. But the times matched. My clock in at work, the text history on both our phones. Everything. She had knocked on my door. She had heard my footsteps. She had seen my shadow move under the frame. She had heard my voice answer her. Same bass, same rhythm, same words I just sent by text, while I was already gone. This was a few years back. I was in this small city for a 3-day music festival. The kind where you're sunburnt and exhausted by noon, and somehow still drinking at midnight. I'd booked the absolute cheapest hotel I could find that was still walking distance from the venue. You know the kind. Old carpet, weird hallways. But hey, the shower worked and the bed didn't collapse, so I was happy. By the second or third night, I was wrecked. My partner, Lily, was with me, and we stumbled back to the room after the last set. I had this terrible habit back then. I'd get drunchies at the end of a long day of drinking, order a bunch of food, and then fall dead asleep about 15 minutes before it arrived. Next morning, I'd wake up hungover to a sad, cold feast sitting out all night. So that night, I'm lying on the bed in the dark, hotel TV murmuring in the background, phone in my hand, painting a picture. I order a ridiculous amount of fast food on the app, burgers, fries, the whole deal. Hit place order, and I can feel that heavy festival sleep starting to pull me under. You know that feeling where your whole body just gives up? That was me. I'm right on the edge of passing out when, boom, something slams into the wall on my left. Like, hard. Not a little tap, not pipes or footsteps. Like someone threw a heavy object directly at the wall. I jolt awake. Lily shoots up too. My heart is going crazy. We're both just staring at that wall like, what the hell was that? Now on that side of the room, there was nothing. No dresser, no headboard, no picture frame. Nothing stacked that could have fallen. Just plain wall. We try to be reasonable about it. Maybe it's a mouse, but it was way too loud for a rodent. Maybe the neighbors, but it sounded like it was right next to my ear. I remember lying there, adrenaline pumping, and this little thought creeps in like, okay, what if that wasn't normal? What if that was something else? And then suddenly I'm like, wait, I ordered food. I grab my phone, open the app, and sure enough, it says the order was delivered like 3 minutes earlier. So now I'm sitting there thinking, did something just wake us up so we wouldn't sleep through our food again? It lined up so perfectly. The timing was too on the nose. Lily and I look at each other, wide-eyed, and we both kind of nervously laugh. But we're also definitely weirded out. We drag ourselves up, open the door, and boom, there's our food bag sitting out in the hallway. We bring it in, spread everything out, and finally start paying attention to the TV. And this is where it gets extra weird. Some random show is on with Jack Osborne and Ozzy Osbourne doing one of those paranormal adventure things. I hadn't really been watching it. It was just background noise. But as I actually look up, I realize the episode is literally about them staying in a haunted hotel. I just freeze for a second. I'm sitting in this cheap, slightly creepy hotel room, eating food that a mysterious wall bang woke me up to get. And on the TV, Jack and Ozzy are wandering around a haunted hotel, talking about spirits messing with guests. At that point, the coincidence level was getting ridiculous. I kind of got that tingly feeling like, okay, universe, I see you. This is a bit much. We eventually crash. Food eaten, no leftovers abandoned to the night for once. Next morning, we're getting ready to head back out to the festival. I'm rummaging through my bag when suddenly I hear this loud buzzing sound. Took me a second to realize what it was. My hair clippers in my bag, turning themselves on. I turn them off and just stand there for a second like, okay, that's another one. Individually, all these things are small. A loud bang, a spooky TV episode, clippers turning on. But strung together, inside this slightly off vibe hotel, all while I'm already primed by that weird wake-up timing. It felt like something was trying to get our attention. We go out for the day, trying not to overthink it. Before we leave the room, we're careful. TV off, lights off, everything unplugged that doesn't need to be on, just in case. We come back later that afternoon, open the door. The TV is on. Volume low, show playing. Like someone came in, sat down, and got bored halfway through their program. And I know we turned it off. Lily knows it too. We both just stop in the doorway, look at the screen, then look at each other like, okay, yeah, that's not normal. By then I'm fully creeped out, but also oddly, not terrified. The feeling in the room wasn't menacing. It was strange and a little unnerving, but it didn't feel hateful. It honestly felt like someone hanging around, curious, like a roommate that doesn't quite understand boundaries. That night I got drunk again. Shocking, I know. And I hit this point where I was like, all right, if there's something here, I'm just going to talk to it. So I sit on the edge of the bed, look at that same wall where the bang happened, and I start talking out loud, kind of half serious, half nervous, with that tipsy bravery you get. I hear you, I say. I respect that you're here. I know you woke us up the other night, and thank you for that. That was really kind, actually, saving our food. I remember saying something like, we're just visiting. We're not here to bother you. We'd really appreciate it if you don't try to scare us or harm us. We'll be gone soon. But we acknowledge you. And we're asking for some peace while we're here. It sounds cheesy, but I meant it. I could feel this weird mix of gratitude and fear, like I was speaking to a roommate I couldn't see. After that, nothing else happened in that hotel. No more bangs, no more surprise TV, no clippers buzzing in my bag. The last night was calm. We finished the festival, checked out, went home. A couple days later, I'm back at my place, completely out of haunted hotel mode. I unpack my stuff, toss my travel bag in the corner, and just chill for a bit. A little while passes, and then I hear it. That same exact buzzing. I look over at the bag, and my stomach drops a bit. I walk over, open it up, and yep, the clippers are on, again, all by themselves. At that point, I just kind of laughed, like this disbelieving, you have got to be kidding me laugh. But the weird thing is, I wasn't actually scared. Not the way you'd think. I remembered how it felt in that room. Not evil, not malicious, just present, curious, almost friendly. I got this sense, call it my imagination, call it whatever, that it was like a little goodbye. A final, hey, thanks for the company, before it went on its way. After that, nothing. No more strange noises, no more moving objects, no more electronics turning on by themselves. To my great relief, honestly. But every now and then, when I'm half awake at night, and I hear some random noise in the house, I think back to that cheap hotel near the festival, that loud bang on the wall, the haunted hotel show on TV, and my clippers buzzing in the dark. And I can't help but feel like, for a few days. We shared a room with someone who just really didn't want our fries to go to waste. So, picture this. It's 1:47 in the morning, and I'm dead asleep when my phone starts buzzing on the nightstand. I squint at the screen, and it's my husband, Milo. Now, I already knew he was on his way home. He'd texted me about 20 minutes earlier, saying he'd just left work. So my stomach drops uneasy. Because if he's calling now, something's wrong. I answer and go, "Hey babe, you okay?" Nothing. Just silence. No breathing, no background noise. Just dead air. So I try again. "Milo?" And then finally I hear him, but his voice sounds weird, distant. "Can you hear me?" "I can now," I say. "Are you okay? What's going on?" He hesitates. I don't know what just happened. I'm almost home, but I saw something. I'm about to lose service. Just be waiting for me on the porch, okay? Please? And then the call drops. So now my heart is racing. You know that feeling when your body wakes up faster than your brain can catch up? That was me. I throw the covers off, grab a hoodie, and head straight for the front door. We live way out on the edge of this tiny town. You blink and you've already driven past it. So our driveway is long and dark. I open the door and just stand there barefoot on the porch, staring down the gravel lane, waiting for his headlights to show up. A couple of minutes later, I see his truck bumping down the drive. Even from the porch light, I can tell something's off. He gets out, shuts the door slowly, and just kind of stands there for a second, like he's not fully back with me yet. He walks up to me, and his face, he looks shocked. Not just scared, like he's trying to rearrange reality in his head and it's not fitting. I ask him, "Milo, what happened?" He runs a hand over his face and takes this deep breath. "Okay," he says. "You're gonna think I'm crazy." "I'm married to you," I tell him. "That ship has sailed. Just tell me." He lets out this nervous laugh and then says, "I saw these things. These tall white people, I guess. A tall white woman and two others with her. But not white like skin tone, like snow white. Like they were made of light, but still solid. They were standing by the old train tracks on Willow Creek Road, right where that one-lane strip crosses over." He looks at me, checking to see if I'm following. "The woman," he continues, "she was holding something. My brain could only compare it to a trash bag with a light inside it. I know that's not what it was, but that's the closest thing I can think of. It was glowing, kind of pulsing." He pauses, and then says quietly, "When I saw them, they turned and noticed me too. And I got this feeling. I can't even explain it. I just knew I needed to get out of there. It was like every hair on my body stood up at once. This unease just dropped over me. I don't know what they were, but they weren't right. They're not human, Ivy. I know that much." We go inside, and I'm trying to be practical. I start reheating the plate of dinner I'd left in the fridge for him, but my brain is already racing. tall white beings out by the tracks, something glowing in their hands. It hits me. The tall whites. I don't know if you've ever gone down that rabbit hole at 3 a.m, but I grabbed my phone and typed tall whites into Google. A bunch of images and sketches pop up. Those classic, tall, slender, pale entities people talk about. I hand him the phone and say, "Any of these look familiar?" He scrolls for a minute, and then he stops on one. His whole expression tightens. That's when the goosebumps hit me. The next morning, after we'd both had a couple hours of sleep, if you can call it that, we decided to drive back out to where he saw them. Part of me was hoping we'd find nothing, so we could chalk it up to fog and a tired mind. You know, something normal. We get to Willow Creek Road, that little stretch that connects the 2 main highways. Nobody lives out there. It's just trees, fields, and those abandoned train tracks cutting across. It had rained lightly during the night. The pavement and the grass were still damp. We park on the shoulder and walk over to the spot Milo points out. And there it is. On the ground, right beside the tracks, there's this blackened patch of dirt. Not just mud. Scorched. The grass around it is crisped back in an almost perfect oval, like something hot settled there for a bit and then vanished. What got me is that everything else was wet. The dirt around it, the rails, the weeds. But that patch, completely dry and burned. I just stare at it and say, "You didn't tell me about this part." He shrugs, eyes still on it. It wasn't there when I drove past. At least, I don't remember it being there. We're both quiet for a minute, listening to the wind and the distant hum of cars from the highway. It feels heavy out there. Still, we start walking back to the car, talking low, trying to make sense of it, when this old, beat-up blue Chevy pulls up behind us. The engine rattles as it idles, and my first thought is, great, now we're trespassing on someone's land and they're mad about it. The window rolls down, and this older man leans out. Weathered face, ball cap, plaid shirt. He calls out, "Hey, what are y'all up to out here?" Milo and I share a quick look. We don't recognize him at all. I say, "Oh, we were just looking at something by the tracks. Is our car in your way?" He shakes his head and kills the engine. "Nah, you're fine." He opens the door, steps out, and shuts it with a rusty clunk. "Did you kids see something interesting?" Milo hesitates. I saw something out here the other night on my way home from work. Not sure what it was, though." The old man nods slowly, like that answer doesn't surprise him at all. "Is that right?" he says. "Well, I live back that way." He points toward the highway. "Been out here pretty much my whole life." There's this short, awkward silence as we shuffle a little closer to our car, not sure if we should stay or go. And then he breaks it with, "Tell me something. Y'all believe in aliens?" Milo and I look at each other, and it's one of those wordless conversations married couples have. Like, are we really doing this? I finally say, "Yeah, actually, we do." His whole face softens with relief. "Good," he says. "Makes this a whole lot easier." He goes on to tell us that he and his late wife used to see strange things out here all the time. Lights in the sky, Odd sounds coming from the fields, that sort of thing. Little stories that, if you heard just one, you'd shrug off. But stacked together over a lifetime, it starts to feel like a pattern. We mention the black scorch mark by the tracks, and he just nods. Yeah, he says, almost casually. That's from them. From them. Then he asks, you ever seen anything over your place? Up in the sky, I mean? Something you couldn't explain? Milo pulls out his phone. A couple months back, he'd recorded these lights above our house, moving in ways no plane or helicopter should be able to move. He pulls up the video and hands it over. Then he glances at us and says, listen, if you're not in a rush, I got some pictures I could show you. My daddy took them years ago. Y'all might find them interesting. Now, I know, following a stranger to an old farmhouse in the middle of nowhere sounds like the start of a true crime podcast, not a UFO story. But Milo has his carry permit, and something about the old man feels genuine. Not slick, not attention-seeking. Just tired of keeping this stuff to himself. So, against what common sense probably recommends, we agree to follow him. We drive behind his truck down a narrow road lined with trees until it opens up into this old farmstead. 2-story white house with peeling paint, a leaning barn, and a little metal-sided garage off to the side. The kind of place you can tell has a lot of history just by looking at it. He leads us over to the small garage and rummages around in an old drawer until he pulls out a faded envelope. Inside are 4 worn Polaroids, edges curled, colors a little washed out with age. He lays them out on a workbench for us to see. Every single one shows some version of the same thing, a classic flying saucer shape in the sky. Not some blurry dot either, clear enough that you can make out the outline, the bright reflection where the sun hits it. My father took these, he says, tapping a finger gently on one of the photos. Back when I was a boy. There's more in the house somewhere, but these are the ones I kept handy. I pick one up and just stare at it, knowing that we had just been standing by a fresh scorch mark that he claims is from them, makes it land differently. It's not just a weird picture on the internet. It's tied to a place we were physically standing a half hour ago. He goes on, talking in that steady, matter-of-fact tone people use when they've told the same story 1,000 times and stopped caring whether anyone believes them. He says he doesn't know exactly where they come from or why they're here, but he's sure there are different kinds, different species, different craft. He's seen lights that move like they're playing, others that feel like they're searching, and a few that just sit there, watching. You can hear the grief in his voice when he mentions his wife, how she used to stand out in the yard with him at night, pointing out strange lights and jotting the dates down in a little notebook. He laughs a little, saying, she always said one day they'd land right here in the field and ask for her by name. We stay for a while, just listening. It feels less like a spooky story and more like being handed a family secret. Eventually, we thank him for sharing everything and tell him we should get going. As we're leaving, he walks us back to the car and says, y'all keep your eyes open out here. Once you've seen him, you'll see him again. On the drive home, Milo and I are both quiet for a long time. The kind of quiet where your brain is loud, but you don't have the words yet. Finally, he says, I don't know what I saw that night, but I know it wasn't just people messing around by the tracks. And I nod, staring out at the tree line. Yeah, I say. I don't think it was either. I'd like to tell you we walked away with answers that day, but we didn't. What we came away with was a new friend who spent his whole life dancing around the same mystery we just tripped over. And as for what my husband actually encountered out there, by those abandoned tracks, under that thin, rainy sky, I'm still not 100% sure. So, okay. Let me just tell this straight. Like we're sitting on the couch and I'm venting to you. About 3.5 years ago, my stepdad, Daniel, decided we needed more space. So he added this little extension to the house. Just an extra bathroom and a walk-in closet for my older brother, Leo. The closet got finished, painted, shelves in, light works, all that. But the bathroom? Yeah, it's still a half-built shell. Bare walls, exposed pipes, tools in a dusty corner. At this point, I honestly don't think it's ever getting done, because that bathroom is just sitting there, unfinished. That whole end of the house feels wrong. It's colder back there, even when the heat's on. The air feels heavier somehow, like the kind of dust that settles on memories you don't want to revisit. Even the closet, again, totally finished, has this weird vibe. I can go in to grab clothes, but I don't like hanging out in there. After a few minutes, I feel like I'm being watched and I'm out. For the longest time, I just brushed it off. Old houses creak, right? Weird drafts, bad insulation, whatever. I didn't really think about it. Until late last year. It started with this horrible smell under the closet floor. At first we thought something normal had happened, like, okay, we have a lot of strays around here. There are raccoons, stray cats, whatever, always getting into people's trash. We figured maybe one of them crawled under the house and died or something. Gross, but logical. We aired it out, sprayed stuff, tried to ignore it. Then the smell went away, and the noises started. My parents' room is right next to the unfinished bathroom, and Leo's room is on the other side, sharing a wall with the closet. My mom, Nina, is the lightest sleeper on planet Earth. I'm not even exaggerating. If you drop a sock in the next room, she's awake. Earlier this year, she kept jolting awake at like 3 in the morning because of these loud bangs and thuds coming from the extension. She said it sounded like someone dropping something heavy on the bathroom floor, or like fists hitting the wall. Leo heard it too from his side, like pounding inside the wall or footsteps across the closet ceiling. They both told me about it, and I kind of shrugged it off. I mean, I sleep like a slab of concrete. A meteor could hit the backyard and I'd snooze through it. So I thought, maybe you guys were just dreaming, you know? Weird house noises, half-asleep brains. It happens. But then the banging stopped. And that should have made things better. It didn't. A few months ago, I was home alone one night. It was one of those nights where the sky is just this deep, heavy black, and the whole neighborhood feels quiet in a way that's almost too quiet. It was just me and our dog, Miso, in my room. Lights off, curtains drawn, blue glow from my laptop. I had some random YouTube video on. One of those dumb commentary channels where you half listen while scrolling your phone. I remember laughing at something the guy said, and then something else laughed. loud. It wasn't from the video. It wasn't even close to sounding human. It was distorted, like someone took a normal laugh and dragged it through static. And the worst part? It didn't sound like it was coming from the hallway, or the doorway, or the closet. It sounded like it was right next to me, like over my shoulder. I don't embarrass easily, but I almost peed myself. I sat there frozen, staring at the wall for what felt like forever. When I finally worked up the courage to pause the video and check, there was nothing there. Just my room. Just the glow of the screen. Just my dog, still staring at that same spot. And after that, it's like the whole extension woke up. Little things kept happening. Leo told me that one night, he was lying in bed scrolling his phone, just about to doze off, when he felt breath. Actual warm breath, right next to his ear. And then, clear as day, he heard someone whisper his name. Leo. He thought it was me messing with him. He sat up, turned the light on, checked the hallway. Nothing. I was out with friends that night. No TV, no windows open, no one calling him. Just that one word in his ear. And it's not just him. There have been so many tiny moments, and if they were alone, maybe I'd ignore them. But they pile up. I felt the mattress dip behind me while I'm lying on my side, like someone just sat down on the edge of my bed. You know that feeling, right? How the weight pulls you slightly toward that spot. I felt that. No one there when I turned. No one walking away. Just the imprint in my mind. Like I wasn't alone. Some nights I'll walk past the extension to grab something, and this wave of unease hits me, like stepping into a room where an argument just happened. The air feels thick, and I suddenly don't want my back to the unfinished bathroom. I'll catch myself speed walking back to the main part of the house like a little kid. Miso has started acting off too. He'll stand in the doorway of the hall that leads to the extension and just stare. Sometimes he'll bark or whine at absolutely nothing. Paws planted, tail low, eyes locked on that end of the house. Once, he refused to go into Leo's room at all, even when Leo called him. He just sat there in the hallway, staring past him toward the closet. And then there are the dreams. This whole year, my dreams have been stranger than usual. Not full-on nightmares every night, but enough that I wake up uneasy. I keep dreaming of hallways that never end, doors that open into the wrong rooms, or standing in the half-finished bathroom and realizing there's a mirror on the wall that shouldn't be there. In the mirror, there's someone behind me, but when I turn around, no one's there. It feels too specific to be random, you know? And then, 2 nights ago, Leo got the worst of it. He told me he was lying in bed, lights off, phone on night mode, just about to finally put it down. You know that stage where your eyes are starting to blur and you're kind of drifting? The door to his room was half open, facing that short hallway that leads to the closet and the unfinished bathroom. Out of nowhere, that feeling hits him. That heavy, someone's watching you feeling. He looks up from his phone, and there's a figure standing in his doorway. Not close enough that he could see a face, but close enough that he could tell it wasn't a trick of the light. Just a solid, dark shape, a little taller than him, filling the doorway. Not moving,
just there, watching. He blinked, and it was gone. He swears he wasn't fully asleep yet. He swears he hadn't been dreaming. And I know him well enough to tell when he's hamming it up, and when he's genuinely rattled. That night, he was pale and shaky, and kept the hall light on till morning. So now we're here, but the other part of me can't ignore how many of us have felt something. My mom hearing banging, Leo hearing his name, Miso growling at empty air, that horrible laugh right beside me, the figure in the doorway. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's something we can fix with a space heater and better insulation. Or maybe it's something we'll just learn to live with. I honestly don't know. All I know is that ever since we added that extension, there's a corner of this house that doesn't feel like ours. And whatever's there, it feels like it's finally started noticing us back. A little while ago, about 3 weeks now, we moved back into the house I grew up in. It's on this quiet, tree-lined road outside a small town. The kind of place where the nights feel too dark and the crickets are louder than your thoughts. I already knew the property was different. Haunted, honestly. My mom and I dealt with weird stuff here my whole childhood. When my parents decided to put a double wide on the back of the property years ago, the activity didn't stop. It just followed. My mom, Elena, would tell me about things happening almost every day. Footsteps, voices, lights turning on by themselves, that sort of thing. So when we moved back in, I kind of braced myself. The first week, I was in the living room with my son, just a regular afternoon, sun pouring in, nothing spooky at all. The front door was shut, like fully latched. No breeze, no windows open. And then, clear as anything, the knob turned. And the door swung open all the way. Like someone had come in. No one was there. I checked the latch, still snug, no draft. My husband, Mark, tried to give me all the logical explanations. But there's only so many times you can say, settling house, before it starts to sound ridiculous. The second week, I was in the kitchen. There's this one spot on the floor that only creaks when you step right on it. Everybody in the family knows it. I was standing by the sink, not moving, when that exact spot let out a long, slow creak, as if someone had just stepped there and shifted their weight. But I was alone. I remember just standing there with my hands in the dishwater, staring at that spot and thinking, okay, you're back too then. And then last night, the mimic showed up. So, I was getting the kids ready to go over to my parents' place. I told my daughter Lucy to get dressed because we were going to go see Nana and Papa. I walked over to the front window to see if my mom was maybe already on her way over. She does that sometimes, just pops in. When I looked out, I saw a woman walking up our front path. She had long hair pulled into this messy, low ponytail, kind of my mom's build, wearing an oversized gray t-shirt and dark leggings, exactly the kind of comfy outfit my mom, Elena, lives in. She was just a few steps from the porch, head slightly down like she knew where she was going, casual, familiar. And without even thinking, I turned toward my daughter and said, "Oh, Nana came to get you." But then, it realized I was looking at it. The woman stopped, jerked her head slightly like she'd been caught, and then darted sharply to the right, out of my line of sight. Not like a normal,
Oh, I forgot something kind of move. It was too fast, too deliberate, more like an animal scrambling for cover. My heart did that weird, cold flip in my chest. I rushed to the front door, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. The yard was quiet. Nobody on the path. Nobody to the right where I'd seen her disappear. The air felt heavy, like the moment right before a storm. I laughed, trying to shake it off, and called out, "Mumsy, I know you're out here. Where'd you go?" From behind me, far off to my left, I heard her answer. "Out here, sweetheart." Her voice came from her porch, across the property, the opposite direction from where I'd just seen that woman. It was like my stomach fell straight through the floor. I turned slowly, trying to make sense of it. I called back. "Were you just over here, outside my window a second ago?" She frowned and said, "No, I haven't moved from my porch." And that's when it hit me, like ice water down my spine. Whatever I'd just seen walking toward my door, it wasn't her. When my parents first moved into the newer house on the property, before we came back, my mom walked into my brother's room once and saw him sitting at his desk, headphones on, staring at his computer. She stood in the doorway, told him something about dinner. He nodded. She left. A few minutes later, my brother Daniel walked in through the front door, with his keys in his hand. He'd just gotten home from work. He hadn't been in that room at all. Over the years, Mom's heard my dad, Rob, call for her from the back bedroom or the hallway. She'd answer, go looking for him, and then remember, he was working late, or out of town, or she was completely alone in the house. Once, she heard him say her name so clearly from just behind her that she almost dropped the dish she was washing. Even my brother's wife, Carrie, has had run-ins with it. They stayed in this house for a week while their place was being worked on, and she told me afterward that she'd heard Daniel calling her name from the hallway more than once. Only, he wasn't home yet. The last time, she said it was so real that she answered him and walked from room to room looking for him. By the end of that week, she was pale and exhausted. When they visited again last year and we offered them the guest room, she just shook her head and said, "I'll come by during the day, but I'm not sleeping here again." And I get it now. I told Mark, my husband, the same thing I've been saying for years. I can handle noises. I can handle footsteps in empty rooms, a door opening by itself, even the occasional shadow in the corner of my eye. I grew up with that. It's scary, but it's familiar. But seeing my mom, one of my best friends, my safe person, standing outside my window when it wasn't actually her, that's my line. There's something about it wearing her shape, using her height and her walk, and even her clothes, that feels like a violation. Like it reached into the part of me that relaxes when I see her, and twisted it on purpose. And the part I can't stop thinking about is this. If it didn't want me to see it, why did it come right up to my window, in broad daylight, looking exactly like her? And if it did want to be seen, why did it dart away the moment our eyes met? That's the question that keeps me up at night, in this house I love, on this land that never really let us go. Why would something take the shape of someone I trust, if it didn't plan to use that trust for something? So,
I want to tell you about this house I grew up in, because even now, years later, I still think about it. I moved there around 7th grade, out to this brand new house in the middle of a huge field in rural North Carolina. Like, picture waist-high grass in the summer, one long gravel driveway, and then just our house. No neighbors you could see from the windows, no old creaky farmhouse history or anything like that. It was a new build. We were the first people to live there. Which is why I never expected it to be creepy. I always thought haunted houses had to be old. Peeling wallpaper, weird basements, all that. But this place is still the spookiest house I've ever lived in. From the beginning, I just never felt relaxed in it. When I was home alone after school, I would turn on practically every light on the first floor and park myself in the living room. I refused to go down the hallway or upstairs unless I absolutely had to. The dark in that house didn't feel like normal dark. It felt heavy. Like the quiet was watching me. At night, even in high school, I slept with a little nightlight and the TV on low. I told my parents it was because I liked background noise, but it was really because the silence freaked me out. Friends picked up on it too. My friend Hannah, for example, hated the bonus room over the garage. It was this finished playroom where we kept video games and old toys. She wouldn't go in there alone. She'd stand in the doorway and just go, "Nope, this room just feels wrong." And honestly, I agreed with her. I just didn't want to say it out loud. The first really weird thing happened on the back porch. We had these big sliding glass doors that looked out over a wooden deck and then the field beyond. On the deck were 2 old wooden rocking chairs side by side. If there was a breeze, both chairs would rock gently, like you'd expect. But every so often, I'd glance outside and there would be no wind. Like, the trees and the tall grass would be completely still, and only one of the rocking chairs would be moving. Just that one. Rocking steadily. Like someone had just sat down or stood up. It would rock for a little while and then just stop. Not slow down and eventually stop the way it normally would, but stop abruptly, like someone had put a hand on it. Nothing else outside ever moved when that happened. No wind chimes, no branches, nothing. My dad used to laugh it off and say, that's just the old farmer who used to work this land, taking a break." He'd grin and kind of wink at me, but it never felt like a joke to me. I'd just sort of nod and pretend it didn't bother me, then avoid looking out there if I was alone. The second thing is the one that really stuck with me. One afternoon, I got home from school before everyone else. My parents were still at work, and my younger brother and sister were still at their elementary school. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and dropped my backpack by the stairs like I always did. I went straight to the kitchen to get a snack. I remember opening the fridge, rummaging around, not thinking about anything except how hungry I was. And then, from upstairs, I heard footsteps. It wasn't like a house creaking. It sounded like actual footsteps, like someone walking across the floor. A few steps, then a pause. Another couple of steps,
At first I froze, just listening. Then, for some reason, because apparently I learned nothing from horror movies, I walked toward the stairs to check. So I'm standing there at the base of the stairs looking up. The house is dead silent now, but my heart is pounding. I take one more step so I can see a bit more of the landing. And in that moment, I hear this quick shuffle, like someone suddenly darting across the floor, and I see a shadow streak across the wall, just a dark shape, crossing from left to right. Immediately after that, I hear the sound of glass clinking in my parents' room. My mom had this silver tray on her dresser with a bunch of perfume bottles on it, and it sounded exactly like those bottles bumping into each other. That was it for me. I didn't try to be brave. I turned around and ran out of the house so fast I left everything, my backpack, my phone, my keys, inside. I tore down the driveway toward the road and just stood there, my heart in my throat, staring back at the house. Nothing looked strange from the outside. No one in the windows, no car in the driveway except mine on the shoulder. Just this quiet, perfectly normal-looking house. I finally used a neighbor's phone to call my mom. I told her what I'd heard and seen, every detail. And she did that calm mom thing like, "Sweetheart, it's probably just the house settling. You're worked up. Go back inside. I'll be home in a few minutes." I did not want to go back in, but I also didn't want to stand by the road like a weirdo. So I walked back up the driveway, still shaky, and tried the front door. It was locked. And not just the doorknob, the deadbolt was locked too. When I came home, I had unlocked the door and walked in. I never turned around to lock it again, much less flip the deadbolt. I didn't even bring my keys with me when I ran out. They were still sitting inside by my backpack. I just stood there on the porch, staring at the locked door, absolutely sure I had not touched that deadbolt. When my mom finally pulled into the driveway, she got out of the car, came up the steps, and unlocked both the deadbolt and the knob from the outside, like nothing was strange. I tried to explain again, but she just smiled and said, "You probably locked it without thinking." And maybe that's true. Maybe. But to this day, I can't make that make sense in my head. The last thing happened a couple of years later, when we were getting ready to move out. By then I was in high school, and we'd already moved most of our stuff to the new place, but we still owned the house in the field for a little while. There were just a few things left: a couch, the kitchen table, 2 beds, and some random boxes. Of course, being teenagers with access to an almost empty house, my friends and I used it to hang out on weekends. Our parents thought we were at each other's houses. In reality, we were out at the empty house, eating junk food and feeling like we were doing something wild just by being unsupervised. On this particular night, it was just me and one friend, my buddy Mark. No party, no big group, just the 2 of us sitting at the kitchen bar, talking and picking at a bag of chips. From where we were sitting, we had a clear view down the hallway. At the end of that hall was a little half bathroom, and the door was wide open. The hallway light was off, the bathroom light was off, and the only light in the house was coming from the kitchen over our heads. We're mid-conversation, just laughing about something dumb, when suddenly the light in the bathroom at the end of the hall flips on. Not flickers, click, fully on. The whole doorway glows, lighting up that end of the hall. We both stop talking immediately and just stare. The light stays on for maybe 10 seconds. Long enough for us to look at each other with that, "Are you seeing this too?" face. Then it shuts off. A second later, it snaps back on. Off again, on again. We just sat there, frozen, back straight, not even breathing. The last time it went off, it stayed off. We didn't even talk about it at first. We just kind of looked at each other, slowly pushed our stools back, and Mark goes, very quietly, "So, we're not sleeping here tonight, right?" I was like, "Nope, absolutely not." We grabbed our stuff, walked, not ran, because for some reason we didn't want to look panicked. Out the front door, locked it behind us, and left. I remember the drive away from that place feeling like the longest 10 minutes of my life. Eventually, my parents sold the house. A new family moved in. I honestly hope they've had a perfectly normal experience there. Maybe there are totally reasonable explanations for everything I just told you. Air pressure, wiring issues, typical new house quirks. But I can't shake the feeling I had living there. That low, constant hum of unease. The single rocking chair moving on a still day. The footsteps, and the shadow, and the clinking perfume bottles. The deadbolt locking itself. The bathroom light flipping on and off like someone wanted our attention. Maybe it was all in my head. Or maybe that brand new house in the middle of the field just wasn't as empty as we thought. So, let me tell you about the one time I very seriously decided I was done messing with anything even remotely ghost-related. I was in my early 30s. My partner, Hannah, and I had flown out to visit a friend of ours, Marcus, who was living in Vancouver at the time. We were crashing at this old condo his manager owned. One of those places that looks totally normal in daylight, but at night, it suddenly feels like it has way too many corners. From the first night, my sleep was just wrecked. Every time I drifted off and started dreaming, I'd become aware of someone standing in the corner of the bedroom. Same corner, same presence. I'd notice him, get this jolt of fear, snap awake, then roll over, fall back asleep, start dreaming again, and there he'd be. Over and over, like a broken record. I'm not exaggerating when I say this happened maybe 20 times a night. I'd barely fall asleep before it started again. By the end of the second night, I was exhausted, wired, and honestly, a little pissed off. On the third night, something in me just snapped. I'm in the dream again, and there he is. This man in the corner. But instead of freezing like I usually did, it was like I suddenly went lucid. I remember thinking, no, not tonight. I'm done. So in the dream, I marched right up to him. He looked ordinary, which somehow made it worse. Mid-30s maybe. Light brown hair slicked back. This mustard-colored button-up shirt. No shoes. He was just staring at me like he'd been waiting. I said something like, "Who are you, and what do you want?" And he answers, calm as anything. "My name is Victor. I have a message for..." And then, right where the important part should be, everything cuts out. It's like someone yanked the sound cable. Instead of words, I hear this high-pitched ringing, like feedback in my ears. He's clearly still talking, his mouth is moving, but I can't hear a thing except that piercing tone. The only thing I clearly remember is his name, Victor. Next thing I know, I jolt awake. The room is quiet. I grab my phone, 6 a.m. I remember lying there thinking, well, at least it's morning. Maybe it's over now. I'd finally gotten what felt like maybe an hour of real sleep. Fast forward to the fourth night. We'd been out late with Marcus, bar hopping, laughing, just enjoying being together. By the time we got back to the condo, it was around 2 a.m., right about the time the corner guy would usually start his routine with me. We're half drunk, sitting around in the living room, and Marcus asks casually, "So, how you sleeping here?" That kind of caught me off guard, so I shrug and laugh and say something like, "Honestly, not great. I keep having this weird dream. There's this guy standing in the corner of the bedroom, and every time I see him, I wake up. It just keeps looping." I didn't go into much detail. I didn't mention his name, what he looked like, what he was wearing, none of that. It was just some drunk late-night ghost story sharing. Then Hannah turns to look at me. Her face goes from playful to completely serious in an instant. And that never happens lightly with her. She stares at me and says, slowly, "Was he a tall guy? Light brown hair, slicked back, wearing a mustard-colored button-up, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, no shoes?" I swear to you, I felt everything in me just go cold, because I had never told her those details. I hadn't told anyone those details. The shirt color, especially, that weird mustard yellow, was so specific it made my skin crawl. And she gives me this crooked little smile and says, "Because he just walked in." She was half joking, obviously, trying to freak us out, piling on more jokes after that. But the timing, the seriousness in her eyes when she'd first described him, that was not a joke. I could tell. Years later, when things had calmed down and I'd convinced myself it was all just coincidence, I asked her again, "Seriously, how did you know what he looked like? Down to his shirt and everything." She just shook her head and said, "You don't want to know." And something in the way she said it made me believe her. I dropped it after that. I really, genuinely, did not want to know. But honestly, the scariest part wasn't the dreams. It wasn't even Hannah naming the guy from my dreams like she'd seen him herself. The part that sits with me, the part that changed her, is what happened that fourth night when we finally went to bed. We were both drunk and tired, so we crashed pretty hard. Sometime in the middle of the night, I started waking up to these strange sounds next to me. It sounded like Hannah was struggling to breathe, like a weird gasping, almost like choking or, I don't know, something caught in her throat. Because we'd been drinking, I just assumed she was snoring in some weird position. I'd nudge her, shove her a little, grumble at her to roll over. She'd quiet for a bit, then start again. Here's the thing. We've been together 2 decades now. I know all her sleep noises. I can tell you what she sounds like when she's congested, when she's dreaming, when she's dead asleep. I have never heard her make those sounds before or since that night. At around 5 a.m., before dawn, I feel her claw at my arm, like really dig her nails in. It yanks me out of sleep. I open my eyes, but I'm so tired and disoriented that I'm not sure if I'm awake or still dreaming. And then, at the edge of my vision, I see something. I don't even know what to call it. A creature? A shadow? It looked like a small, monkey-like thing, hunched on her chest. Not cute, not cartoonish. Its limbs looked too long. Its body too heavy for its size. It was sitting there, pressing down on her, and she was gasping like she was fighting for air. And you know what I did? I rolled over and went back to sleep. I wish I could say I did something heroic, but I didn't. I was too exhausted, too drunk, too confused. I saw it, registered it in that fuzzy way you do when you're half dreaming, and then I just slipped under again. The next morning, the sun's up, and everything looks totally normal. We're packing up, getting ready for the day. I'm still kind of shaken, but I figure maybe I hallucinated the whole thing. So I tease her lightly, trying to make it less creepy than it felt. I say, "Hey, pretty sure I saw a monkey or something sitting on your chest last night. You were making these weird noises like you couldn't breathe." She looks at me, and she just says very simply, "I was." No smile, no sarcasm, just that. And I don't know why, but the first thing that pops out of my mouth is, "Karma, babe. You shouldn't joke around with the dead." I expected her to roll her eyes, crack a joke back, maybe try to spook me one more time. Instead, she just nods, like she agrees, like I'd said something true. When she was 2 years old, her family actually brought in both a shaman and a priest because they believed she was being haunted by the ghost of a child. That's not a fun family anecdote for them. That's something they still talk about, in hushed voices. So for her, cracking that "he just walked in" joke about a spirit, especially one she could apparently describe in detail, was crossing a line she usually wouldn't cross. And after that fourth night, she never made those kinds of jokes again. Not once. We've talked around it a couple of times, very carefully. I've told her how those dreams stopped after we left that condo, how I still remember Victor's name and that awful ringing in my ears where his message should have been. I've told her I half remember that monkey-like thing on her chest, the way she sounded like she was suffocating, how she clawed at me to wake me up. And every time I ask, even gently, "How did you really know what he looked like? What really happened to you that night?" she shuts down. She just says, "I don't want to talk about it, and you don't want to know." And the thing is, I believe her. So now I don't ask. I won't ask. I respect that boundary. And honestly, I respect whatever was in that condo enough to leave it alone too. All I'm left with is this: a man in the corner who knew my name, a message I wasn't allowed to hear, my partner describing him like she'd seen him herself, and a night that changed her so much she refuses to joke about the dead ever again. I don't know what any of it really was. Maybe there's a rational explanation that would make complete sense. Maybe not. All I know is, if you ever feel tempted to joke about spirits, about the dead, about whatever's on the other side, maybe don't. Some things, I think, are more than happy to be left alone. Hello everyone. Welcome to Paranormal M. Today, after a long day at work, I finally get to sit here again in front of the microphone to do what I love most. Tell the mysterious stories that you've sent from all around the world. I'm truly very happy to know that these stories can help you fall asleep more easily, feel comforted, and less lonely. So, my brother died when he was 11. Accidental drowning. One of those bright, ordinary days that turns into the line in your life where everything is before and after. A few months later, he started visiting. We didn't say that at first, of course. We're a practical family. My dad was an electrician, ex-Navy, the guy everyone called when their lights went out. Mom was very no-nonsense, but little by little it got too weird to ignore. The first thing that we all agreed had to be him was the music box. Before he died, my brother, his name was Danny, had picked out this porcelain figurine music box for our mom for Mother's Day. He was so proud of it. You know, one of those wind-up ones with a tiny on-off switch underneath. My mom kept it in the china cabinet, way up behind the glass where nobody touched it. One night we're all at the dining room table, halfway through dinner. Nobody's left their chair. We're passing the potatoes, just talking about school and work when, suddenly, from the other room, this tinkly little tune starts playing. We all stop, forks midair. We look around like, did somebody forget to mention we're haunted now? My dad stands up, and of course we all trail after him. He walks into the living room and stops in front of the china cabinet. The doors are closed. Inside, behind the glass, that little music box is slowly turning, playing its song. Nobody's near it. The cabinet hasn't been opened. Dad opens the door, and the music stops instantly. He picks up the figurine, flips it over, and there's the switch, set firmly to off. He just stares at it for a second. Then he puts it back, closes the cabinet, and we all go back to the table and finish dinner in total silence. You could hear every clink of the silverware. Afterward, Dad's sitting back with a cup of coffee and one of his roll-your-own cigarettes, and he says, real quiet, almost to himself, Danny was always a bit of a practical joker, wasn't he? And that was kind of the moment we all collectively decided, okay, he's still here. When my mom passed away years later, I inherited that same music box. It sits on my shelf now. It's quiet most of the time, but I always half expect it to start playing on its own again. Let me back up a little and tell you about the house, because that's where most of this happened. When Dad retired from the Navy, we moved back to my parents' home state. They bought a double-wide trailer on this half-acre lot, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 6 kids. So you can imagine how cramped that was. Eventually, Dad bought a single-wide, renovated it, and attached it to the double-wide. Suddenly, we had what we jokingly called the triple-wide mansion. 5 bedrooms, 3 baths, a big family room, and this huge country kitchen with an old wood-burning cook stove. It was chaotic, but it was home. We'd been in that house about 5 years when Danny died. Not long after, we had this bizarre electrical problem, which, in an electrician's house is almost offensive. One day, the power just goes out in half the house. But here's the strange bit. It wasn't like, oh, the front half is out. It was half of each section. The ends where the bedrooms and bathrooms were, fine. Lights, outlets, everything working. But the living room, dining room, kitchen, and family room, completely dead. Dad does what he does best. He shuts off every appliance, every light switch, so nothing gets fried when the power comes back. He crawls under the house, checks every wire, every junction box, every fuse. For days. He calls in his electrician buddies. These are guys who live for this stuff, and they can't find a single thing wrong. This went on for 2 weeks. Half a house lit up, half a house in the dark. Dad finally grumbles that he's going to have to rewire the whole place from scratch. Everything springs to life. Lights blaze on, the TV shrieks to life, and the stereo flips on at full volume, blasting "Stayin' Alive" like we're in the world's most aggressive disco. I will never forget the look on my dad's face. He just froze. Red in the cheeks, jaw clenched, the veins standing out in his neck. This man was furious. My sister and I caught each other's eye and started giggling. Then Mom started chuckling. Within a minute, we were all laughing, and even Dad cracked. He shook his head and muttered something like, "All right, kid, you got me." Because if there was one thing Danny loved, it was flipping switches and messing with the TV and stereo, cranking the volume right when you weren't expecting it. It was exactly his style. Danny wasn't an only son. I had another brother, Mark, who was just a year younger than him. They were close in age and almost the same size, so Mom used to buy their clothes in pairs whenever there were sales. They had matching shirts, coats, pajamas, you name it. To keep it all straight, she'd write their initials on the tags. After Danny died, Mom went into this intense grief-cleaning mode. She gathered every single thing in the house that had his initials on it. Clothes, shoes, anything. She donated all his clothes to the local secondhand shop. She couldn't bear to see them. Then she turned his old bedroom into a storage room, kind of a pantry. A few months later, an old Navy buddy of my dad's came to visit with his family. To make room, Mom put me in the pantry on a rollaway cot and gave my bedroom to the guests. First morning I wake up in there. I stretch, look over, and there's a pair of pajamas laid out neatly across the foot of the cot. Folded, like somebody planned for me to wear them. I pick them up and wander into the kitchen where everyone's sipping coffee. I hold up the pajamas and ask Mom, "Hey, did you leave these for me? Or are they for Mrs. Harrison or one of the kids?" She takes them, glances at the tag, and I see her whole face change. Her eyes get wide, and she lets out this sharp, panicked sort of shriek. "Where did you get these?" I'm stunned. "They were on the bed when I woke up. I thought you put them there." On the tag are Danny's initials. She immediately storms off and drags poor Mark out of bed, accusing him of hiding those pajamas from her and pulling some sick prank to embarrass her in front of our guests. He's standing there half asleep, swearing up and down he has no idea what she's talking about. But I know what I saw. No one but me and a whole lot of cans of green beans slept in that room that night. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, my prankster brother went into his old bedroom, into what was now basically a pantry, and laid his pajamas out across my bed. And Mom? Oh, she was big mad. There were plenty of smaller things too, little jabs and reminders that he was still around. At his funeral, for example, when we all arrived at the church, the main doors refused to open. They just wouldn't budge. They weren't locked, they just wouldn't move. We were all bunched up on the steps while people fiddled with the handles and pushed and pulled. Eventually, they had to reroute everyone to a side entrance. Those stairs were narrow and winding, and carrying the casket up there was awkward and nerve-wracking. After the service, we walked back out through the front doors with no problem at all. They swung open smoothly, like nothing had ever been wrong. Then there was the dryer. One afternoon, it was just Mom and me at home. We're at one end of the house when we hear the dryer start tumbling away on the other side. The laundry room door is closed, but you can hear it going. Thump, thump, whir. Mom sighs and says, "Did you start a load and forget to tell me?" I shake my head. She closes it again. Stands there, staring, like she's waiting for it to start back up. It doesn't. It stayed off after that. Like, okay, joke's over. My dad started finding his slippers in weird places too. He'd swear he left them neatly by the side of the bed, but he'd wake up and they'd be up on the mattress next to his pillow, or at the foot of the bed, pointed the wrong way. Just odd little things that made him grumble under his breath. Stuff would go missing and turn up later in spots we'd already searched. Scissors, pot holders, one shoe from a pair. Clocks and radios would stop working for a day or two and then magically fix themselves. Cupboard doors would be left open. Drawers would be a mess with the silverware all mixed up. Oh, and the recliner in the family room? That thing had a life of its own. We'd go to bed with it in one position and wake up to find it angled a different way, like someone had been sitting there watching TV in the middle of the night. Sometimes, when we turned the TV on, the volume would be set to max, even though the dial was turned low, or the channel would be set to something we didn't even get. One time, the wood pile next to the stove caught my eye. All the logs were stacked neatly, except the top row. Every piece in that top layer had been turned the opposite direction, like somebody had rearranged them just to see if we'd notice. Most of it was the kind of stuff that drives an already detail-oriented mother absolutely around the bend, which, again, would have delighted my brother. My favorite story, though, the one my kids loved the most, happened years later. Halloween night, 1995. By that time, I had a daughter of my own. We'll call her Lily. She was 10, and I let her have a little Halloween party and sleepover. We did the whole thing. Costumes, trick-or-treating, way too much candy, and then Hocus Pocus on TV. After the movie, the girls wanted scary stories. And then Lily says, "Tell them the real ghost stories, Mom." So I turn off most of the lights. We're in the living room. I'm on the couch. They're all sitting on the floor in a half circle, wrapped in blankets, eyes wide. And I start telling them all these stories about Danny in the music box, and the pajamas, and the lights coming back on with the stereo blaring. I'm really hamming it up, doing my best spooky storyteller voice. They're all ooh and no way, completely glued to every word. And right in the middle of a particularly creepy part, the TV suddenly turns on by itself, at full volume. The room explodes with sound and light, commercials blaring, everyone screaming. The girls shriek and pile into each other's laps. I hit the armrest, convinced someone sat on the remote. As soon as we calm down, I say, "All right, who bumped the remote?" One of the girls, big eyes, just points. The remote is sitting on the end table, farthest from me. No one close enough to touch it. Nobody had moved. It was just on. There was this dead silence. And then one of them whispers, "Can we maybe not do any more ghost stories tonight?" I just smiled and thought, "Okay, Danny. Still got it." So yeah, my brother was a prankster in life. And honestly, he stayed a prankster after. Not in a terrifying horror movie way. More like a mischievous little nudge that said, "Hey, I'm still here. Don't forget me." And we haven't. At my grandparents' house on my dad's side, one of my uncles lives there with his family. Let's call him Uncle Martin. He and my Aunt Rosa have 3 kids, 2 girls and a little boy. So it's always a full house, super noisy, super warm. This was back in May, around the middle of the month, when my grandpa's birthday was coming up. The whole family decided to throw him a surprise party, and, like always, when there's a family party, my sisters and I end up helping Aunt Rosa with the decorations. She's the one who plans everything, and her 2 daughters, Sophie and Clara, are like her little assistants. We have this tradition. We start decorating the day before, in the late afternoon, and we just keep going until we can't keep our eyes open. That night was no exception. We were cutting paper, hanging garlands, arguing about colors, listening to music way too loud. All of that. I think we finished around 2:30 in the morning. I'm not totally sure, because by then, my brain was half asleep. Since it was so late, we decided to sleep over in my cousin's room. There were 5 of us girls, my 2 sisters, my 2 cousins, and me. Obviously, we didn't all fit in the same bed. So, my sisters and cousins took the bed, and I said, "It's fine. I'll sleep in the hammock." Because they have this hammock in the corner of the room, right by the window. Honestly, I kind of like sleeping there. It feels cozy. We were exhausted, so we left some of the decorations half done, set an alarm for 5:45 a.m. to wake up and keep working, and crashed. At first, I was completely knocked out. You know that heavy sleep where you don't even dream, you just disappear? That was me. But then, in the middle of the night, I felt the hammock move. It was like someone had pushed it from underneath, or given it a little shove. I woke up a bit, but I was so tired I just thought, ugh, the hammock moved, whatever. And I went back to trying to sleep. I figured maybe I'd shifted my weight or something. A few moments later, no idea how much time had passed, maybe seconds, maybe minutes, I felt this huge tug on my hair. Not like a little pull. It was strong. Like someone had grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked it. Hard. I woke up angry. My first reaction wasn't even fear. It was pure annoyance. I was convinced one of my sisters or one of my cousins was messing with me. I literally sat up in the hammock, turned around, already with my hand half raised, like, whoever did that is getting smacked. But when I looked at the bed, they were all completely asleep. I mean, out. One of my cousins was even snoring softly, and my younger sister had her mouth open, drooling on the pillow. It was that deep, ugly sleep that you just can't fake. That's when the anger disappeared and the fear kicked in. All of a sudden, I felt this intense cold. Not just, oh, the fan is on, cold, but that kind of cold that runs down your back and makes your skin prickle. The room was mostly dark because we'd turned off the lamp to sleep better. Only a bit of light from outside was coming through the window. I stayed very still for a second, just listening. The hammock wasn't moving anymore. The house was quiet. I could hear someone walking around in the hallway far away. But in that room, it was just the sound of their breathing and a little bit of snoring. My heart was pounding so loudly, I was sure someone could hear it. I remember thinking, okay, if it wasn't them, then what pulled my hair? I didn't want to stay one more second in that hammock. I got up as slowly as I could, because the last thing I wanted was for it to start swinging again. My feet touched the floor, and it felt freezing. I didn't even bother looking around too much. I was too scared I'd actually see something. My sister mumbled something like, move. But I hugged her anyway and closed my eyes as tight as I could. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, that it was just a dream, that I'd gotten my hair tangled in the hammock somehow. But deep down, I knew what I felt. It was a hand. Someone, or something, pulled my hair. And let's just say, I haven't been too eager to sleep in that hammock again. I was thinking about which story to share with you next, and I figured I'd go with a more recent one. One that, honestly, I still think a proper paranormal team should investigate. I'm Mira, by the way. I'm 43 now, and I've been psychic my whole life. I didn't develop this later. It's just always been there. Seeing things, knowing things, feeling things I probably shouldn't. It's kind of like having an extra sense that never turns off. There was this town I lived in for a while. In downtown, near the main bus station, there was this old historic house. You couldn't miss it. Big, tired-looking place with peeling paint and these tall, narrow windows. I used the bus all the time back then, so I was constantly walking past it or riding by it, trying very hard not to look. Because there were children there. Ghost children. Everywhere. And they knew I could see them. The very first time I walked past that house on foot is burned into my memory. I had my earbuds in, music turned up, eyes down on the sidewalk. I remember carefully watching where I stepped so I didn't land in some disgusting old wad of gum. It was just a normal day, until it suddenly wasn't. About halfway along the fence line, I got that feeling. You know when you know someone is staring at you and your skin sort of prickles? Now imagine that, but instead of one pair of eyes, it feels like a whole room full of them. I kept walking, trying to ignore it, but the pressure of those stares was so intense that I finally looked up at the house. And there they were. I saw maybe 10 ghost children scattered all over the place, all of them locked onto me. Most of them were pressed up near the windows, faces pale, eyes too wide and too still. One child was standing on a little balcony on the second floor, just motionless, staring right at me, like they'd been waiting. And another one was nothing more than a blur, zipping around inside behind the glass like a bird that got trapped in a room and couldn't find a way out. I remember the one on the balcony the most. The energy from that child hit me like a punch. It was this heavy, seething mix of hatred and anger. Not like a kid throwing a tantrum, but old, deep rage that had been sitting there for a long time. That one felt older than the others, like the leader of the group, or the first to die, or the one who remembered everything. The rest of the children didn't feel hateful. They felt stuck, mostly. Curious, surprised that I could see them. Their faces weren't twisted or monstrous. They just looked like kids who had been alone too long. The house itself dated back to, I think, the 1910s or so. It had that early 20th century look. Tall ceilings, narrow balcony. The kind of place that used to be grand and then just slowly faded. The children were all wearing these long nightgowns, like old-fashioned bedtime clothes. Mostly white or very, very pale, brushing their ankles. Some of them with little lace collars or tiny buttons down the front. At first I didn't understand why there were so many of them, or why they were all dressed like that. It bothered me. I kept seeing them every time the bus went by. Little faces in the windows, staring out at the street, at the people who had no idea they were there. Later on, I found out that the house had been used for different things over the years. Offices, a boarding house, that kind of thing. But at one point, it had been a children's hospital, specifically for kids with tuberculosis. And suddenly, everything made sense. The nightgowns, the number of children, the way the air around that place felt heavy, like it was soaked in old breath and old fear. And on those days, when I did end up walking by, I made a point of acknowledging them. I'd keep my pace steady, look up at the windows, and give them a little wave. At first, they just stared back, like they weren't sure if I was real, or if this was some kind of trick. But after a while, after a few weeks of doing this, something shifted. A couple of them started to wave back. Just small movements. A hand lifting at the window. A little tilt of the head. A flicker of recognition. The one on the balcony never waved. They just watched me. That same hard stare. That same old anger. I always felt like if anyone ever did a proper investigation in that house, that child would be the one they'd have to be the most careful with. There was a story there, a painful one. But the others felt almost grateful, in a quiet way, like being seen mattered. And that's what stays with me the most. Not the fear, not even the anger. but the simple, heartbreaking reality that a bunch of sick children had died there and then just never left. Time moved on. Buses came and went. People rushed past with their coffee and their phones. And those kids just stood at the windows in their little nightgowns, watching the world go by. So whenever I did pass that house, I always waved. Because sometimes, the kindest thing you can do for the dead is to let them know they're not invisible. You know, every time someone asks me why dolls creep me out so much, I never quite know where to start. So, I guess I'll start before I was even born. This story really begins when my mom was still a teenager. Back then, she and her older cousin, her name was Clara, were really into anything mystical. Tarot cards, candles, astrology, all that. One evening, they went to a kind of spiritism session at my grandmother's old house. I don't know exactly who else was there. My mom never liked to go into too much detail. What she does talk about, though, is the doll. In my grandmother's living room, there was this porcelain doll that always sat on a little wrought iron chair near the hallway. According to my mom, during the session, while everyone was focused on the table and the candles, she happened to glance over at that doll. And the doll turned its head, slowly, and blinked. Not just in her direction, but straight at her, as if it recognized her. My mom swears the doll's lips parted just a little, like it was about to say something. That was enough. She bolted out of the house, ran into the street, and refused to go back inside. After that day, she almost never visited my grandmother again. They already had a complicated relationship, so this incident gave her one more reason to stay away. Now, fast forward many years. It was August 2012. I was 11 years old, and it was my first time visiting that same house. My mom had finally agreed to go back, mostly because my grandmother was out of town and my mom needed to pick up some documents. She had a spare key, so it was just the three of us. My mom, my little sister, and me. The house felt paused. Like someone had lived there once and then just stepped out and never came back. But everything stayed frozen exactly as it was. Dust on the furniture, faded family photos. That faint old house smell that's part mold and part memories. At one point, we were on the ground floor, walking past the narrow hallway that led to the staircase. At the bottom of the stairs, against the wall, there was this small wrought iron chair. And sitting on it was a porcelain doll. She had curly chestnut hair, glassy blue eyes, and a pale face with tiny painted lips. She wore a dusty blue dress with little white flowers and lace at the collar. On her lap, there was a small ceramic dish filled with dried rose petals. Nothing about her seemed strange to me at first. She just looked like an old doll that had always belonged there, like part of the house. So, casually, I called out to my mom. I said, "Hey Mom, this doll is kind of pretty. Is it Grandma's?" The change in her face was immediate. She stopped walking. Her skin went almost white. She turned to me and asked, very quietly, "What doll?" I pointed to the chair. "That one, by the stairs. The one in the blue dress." She walked toward me, her steps slow, eyes fixed on the spot. Then the questions started, one after another, her voice getting tighter each time. What does she look like exactly? Her hair, what color is it? Where are her hands? What is she holding? I remember feeling confused, but I answered everything. Curly brown hair, blue eyes, blue dress with flowers, white lace collar, a bowl with dried rose petals in her lap. The more I described, the more my mom's breathing changed. She wasn't just tense, she was terrified. Finally, she whispered, "Stay here," and grabbed her phone. She called my grandmother, Helena, right there in the hallway. I could hear my mom's voice trembling as she asked, "Did you keep that doll? The porcelain one that used to sit on the little iron chair? Is this some kind of joke?" My grandmother sounded annoyed on the other end. I couldn't hear every word, but I distinctly remember my mom asking, "So you're sure you didn't bring the doll back? You're not hiding it from me?" And then my grandmother said something that made my mom go completely silent.
Because it no longer existed.
A long time ago, there had been a kitchen fire. Accidental, but bad enough that it spread into part of the house. A lot of things were destroyed, including that porcelain doll my mom remembered so well. According to my grandmother, the flames had melted and cracked it beyond repair. She'd thrown the pieces away. The only thing that survived intact, my grandmother said, was that little wrought iron chair. My mom ended the call and just stood there for a moment, staring at the empty air in front of her. Then she turned to me and said, very slowly, "Show me the doll again." I turned back to the staircase, to the chair, and it was empty. No doll, no dress, no ceramic bowl. Just the chair, with a faint ring of dust outlining where something might have sat once, a long time ago. I remember my stomach dropping. I kept insisting. She was right there. I saw her. She was right there. My mom grabbed my shoulders and looked me straight in the eyes. "You're sure?" she asked. "You really saw her?" And I was sure. I can still see her in my mind, as clearly as if she were in front of me now. Curly hair, blue dress, rose petals in her lap. That weirdly calm expression on her face. Not smiling, not frowning, just watching. We left the house shortly after. My mom was shaken, and she didn't try to hide it. On the way home, she finally told me the full story about the spiritism session, about how the doll had turned its head and blinked at her, how she'd run out and never wanted to set foot in that house again. "And the doll burned," she said. "I saw what was left of it. There was nothing to save." We went back to the house one more time a few months later. This time, I avoided looking at the staircase for as long as I could. Eventually, of course, I had to look. The chair was there. Just the chair. Cold, empty, harmless looking. But I still felt watched. I've gone over that day in my mind so many times. I've asked myself if it could have been a trick of the light, a reflection, my imagination, some weird overlap of memories. My mother's fear echoing into my own mind. Maybe I somehow recreated the doll in my head from a story I didn't consciously remember hearing. But the thing is, as far as I know, my mom never told me about the doll before that day. She always avoided the subject of that house, and of my grandmother, unless she absolutely had to talk about it. So I don't know what I saw. A hallucination? Some leftover impression? like the memory of an object burns so deeply into a place that it lingers there, visible only to some, or something that just didn't want to be forgotten. I only know this. I was the only one who saw her that day. And ever since then, dolls have unsettled me in a way I can't shake. It's not just that they look creepy. It's that sometimes, when I see one on a shelf or in a window, perfectly still, I can't help but wonder if, just for a second, it might blink. Alright, let me tell you something that happened to me back when I was 25. So, in Thailand we've got this superstition called Benjapas. People say 25 is a cursed age, that it attracts accidents, health problems, breakups, all the bad stuff. When I was younger, I used to laugh it off like, yeah, sure, numbers are scary now. But then this happened. My friends insisted on throwing me a late birthday get-together. Nothing crazy, just drinks and food near Ratchada. I was actually tired and wanted to go home early, but you know how it is. Come on, it's your birthday, one more round. By the time I finally got on my motorbike to head home, it was close to midnight. The roads were pretty empty. I remember the air felt a bit chilly, and I was just cruising, kind of zoning out, thinking about work the next day. I reached this junction I always pass. Normally it's quiet, but that night, as I was crossing, a pickup suddenly blasted through a red light from the side. I didn't even have time to swear properly. I yanked the handle, swerved hard, and the bike just slipped out from under me. Next thing I knew, I was on the road, sliding. My arm burned, my jeans tore, and I tasted dust and blood. The pickup didn't even stop. It just kept going. I lay there for a second, trying to figure out if anything was broken. My knees were scraped, my palms were bleeding, and my left shoulder felt like it had been punched from the inside. But I could stand. That felt like a miracle already. I reached for my phone to call someone, but of course, perfect timing. It flew out when I fell. When I found it, the screen was cracked to pieces and wouldn't turn on at all. Dead. The bike looked bad. The side was scraped up. The mirror was hanging off. But when I tried starting it, the engine still coughed to life. The front wheel, though, felt weird, kind of shaky. I didn't want to stay in the middle of that road, so I pushed myself back on and slowly rode toward this shortcut, a narrow alley I sometimes used to cut home. By then it was past 12. The alley was almost empty. Old houses on each side, metal gates, those orange street lamps that make everything look a bit wrong, you know? Some of the lamps were working, some were flickering, some were completely dead. I was going slowly, just trying not to fall again, when suddenly the front tire gave up completely. It sank and wobbled, and I had to hop off before I tipped over, totally flat. I remember just standing there in the middle of that quiet alley, bleeding, sweating, and so tired. I muttered something like, "Seriously? Tonight of all nights?" I started dragging the bike along, one hand on the handle, one hand on the seat, the flat tire making this dull flapping sound on the ground. Then I heard a voice, a soft, clear voice from somewhere up ahead, near one of the lampposts. "P, what happened to your bike?" I froze. I looked up and saw a young woman, maybe early 20s, standing just inside the circle of light under a flickering lamp. She was wearing an oversized white t-shirt that almost reached her knees, and I couldn't really see if she had shorts on underneath or not. Her hair was tied up in a messy bun. From where I stood, I could only see the right side of her face. It was, honestly, she was really pretty, and she just looked so normal, like she could have been someone's neighbor who stepped out to take the trash. I called back, trying to sound less shaken than I felt. "My tire's flat," I said. "Had an accident back there." She tilted her head a little, still half turned away from me. "You're bleeding," she said. "You should get that cleaned." "I will," I answered. "I just need to get this thing home first."
She pointed further up the alley, past where I could see clearly.
Now, normally, I would be suspicious. A random girl in a dark alley after midnight, telling me where to go. But something about her voice was calm, gentle, not pushy, not creepy. More like a neighbor giving directions. Really? This alley? I asked. I've never seen a shop here. It's there, she said, like she'd walked past it 100 times. Just keep going. You'll see tires stacked outside the house. Don't worry, the uncle is kind. Tell him Tao sent you. Tao? I repeated. She just gave this small smile, still not turning her full face toward me. Go, she said, before your leg swells. I laughed a little at that, said thank you, and started dragging my bike in the direction she pointed. The alley felt longer than usual, but after maybe a minute, I saw it. A small house with a rusty metal gate and a pile of tires leaning against the wall. There was a dim light from inside and the sound of a TV playing. Honestly, I got goosebumps right then. I'd walked this alley in the daytime before, and I swear I never noticed a repair place there. But I was too tired to question it. I rang the bell. After a while, an older man came out in shorts and a singlet, rubbing his eyes. He looked at me, then at the bike, then back at my bloody elbow. "What happened to you, eh?" he asked. "Accident at the junction," I said. "The front tire's dead. A girl back there told me your shop could help." He frowned a bit. "Girl? This late? What girl?" She said her name was Tao," I answered. "She told me you were still awake." His expression changed, but he didn't say anything about it right away. He walked over, checked the wheel inside. "Inner tube's gone," he said. "Leave it here. I fix it in the morning. You come back after work." I nodded, feeling this huge wave of relief. "Thank you, Uncle. Really. I don't even know how I'd have made it home without this place." He just grunted and started pulling the bike inside. I turned around, wanting to walk back and thank the girl properly. But when I looked toward the lamppost where I'd seen her, there was no one there. The alley was completely empty. Just that flickering light and the sound of some dog barking in the distance. I thought maybe she'd gone into one of the houses, so I walked a bit back, glanced at the gates, the doors. Nothing. No sound of anyone walking away, no doors closing. Just silence. A little chill crept up my neck, but I told myself, maybe she lives right here. Don't overthink it. I bowed slightly toward the lamppost like an idiot and whispered, "Thanks." Then hobbled out to the main road to find a taxi. The next morning, I went back to the shop after work. My arm was stiff, my bandages were already dirty, and I was still annoyed at that pickup driver. The uncle had my bike standing outside, tire fixed, everything wiped down a bit. As he was writing the price on a piece of paper, I casually said, "Thanks again for last night. If that girl Tao didn't tell me about your place, I'd still be pushing this thing around." He paused. "You keep saying that name," he said slowly. "Tao." There were a couple of bikers sitting nearby, smoking and chatting. When they heard the name, they went quiet and turned to look at me. One of them asked, "P, what did she look like?" I described her as best as I could. About early 20s, thin, hair in a bun, big t-shirt, really pretty. I only really saw this side of her face, though. I tapped my right cheek. She was standing under that flickering lamp in the middle of the alley. The bikers exchanged looks, and one of them let out a low whistle. "Was it Tao from Soy 9?" he asked the others. Another one nodded slowly. The one who died last week? I laughed, thinking they were messing with me. Come on, don't joke like that. But the uncle just sighed, put his pen down, and looked me straight in the eye. He pointed in the direction of the alley, right under that same lamppost you're talking about. I didn't know what to say. My mouth just went dry. If you don't believe us, one of the bikers added quietly, go look tonight. You can still see the white spray mark on the ground where the police drew around her body. I just stood there, replaying everything in my head. How she never stepped fully into the light. How she only turned the right side of her face toward me. How calm her voice sounded. And then it hit me. I never heard her footsteps. Not when she appeared. Not when she disappeared. I asked them, when did she pass away? 3 nights before your accident, the uncle said. Same time, late at night. For a long moment, none of us spoke. I thought about how I'd been joking about Benjapas, about bad luck and cursed ages. I thought about that pickup that almost killed me, how close the tire came to the bumper, how my phone died right when I needed it most. And then I thought about a young woman, standing under a flickering lamp, telling a stranger exactly where to find help. I'm not going to pretend I'm super brave. That night, when I walked past that lamppost again, I didn't dare look directly at it. But I did notice a faded, uneven white spray mark on the road. And I did say, in my head, if that was really you, thank you. People say spirits in accidents like that can be angry, vengeful, dangerous. Maybe that's true sometimes. But in my Benjapas year, the one they say is cursed, I think I got the opposite. I think I got protection. So now, whenever someone laughs at that superstition, I just smile and tell them, believe it or not, when I was 25, a girl who'd already died made sure I got home safe. So, let me tell you a story that happened to my friend Nara on a trip to Bali, Indonesia, with a big group of international friends. If you've been to Bali, you'll know this, but in case you haven't, most people there are Hindu, and you'll see these beautiful little offerings everywhere. They're small woven trays made of palm leaves, filled with flowers, rice, maybe a biscuit or a piece of fruit. They're called kanangsari, and they're meant to honor the spirits and deities. Anyway, one late afternoon, Nara and her friends were walking to get dinner near Canggu. Everyone was chatting, checking their phones, not really looking where they stepped. Then her friend Leo, one of the Western guys in the group, accidentally stepped right on one of the offerings. Nara, being Thai and having grown up around similar beliefs, immediately went, "Hey, don't do that. You should apologize." But Leo just laughed. A couple of others chuckled with him. He shrugged and said, "It's just, like, trash on the street, right?" Nara felt this cold knot in her stomach. She could feel people at a nearby warung looking at them. So she stepped aside, pressed her hands together, bowed her head slightly, and whispered an apology to the spirits, half for Leo, half for herself for not stopping him in time. That night, they went out for drinks after dinner. The vibe was good. Everyone was relaxed, a little drunk, music in the background, all that. When they finally left the restaurant, they had to walk along a small road, and there were offerings lined up near the entrances to homes and shops. Nara's boyfriend, Ken, who was definitely more than tipsy at this point, stepped on another offering without noticing. The others saw and started teasing him. "Ooh, careful," one of them joked. "The ghosts are gonna get you." Nara didn't find it funny. She told him, "Seriously, stop. Don't step on them." But Ken was drunk and being a show-off. He laughed and said, "These are for ghosts? Okay then, let them come." And he actually started stomping on one or two more offerings, like it was some kind of game. Everyone except Nara burst out laughing. She, on the other hand, felt sick. The air felt heavier somehow. Again, she stepped aside and quietly muttered another apology, asking any spirits listening to forgive them for being stupid and disrespectful. Eventually, they got back to their villa, a nice place with a pool, a little garden, and those dark wooden wardrobes in the rooms that always feel a bit too old and too heavy. Everyone showered, joked around a bit more, and then drifted off to their rooms. Nara and Ken went to bed. She was exhausted and fell asleep almost immediately. Sometime in the middle of the night, she woke up to this faint sound. Scratch, scratch, scratch. At first, she thought it was geckos on the wall. She tried to ignore it, but it kept going. Slow, rhythmic scraping, like nails on wood. She reached out for Ken and realized his side of the bed was empty. Now she was fully awake. The scratching was coming from inside the room. She sat up, heart pounding, and listened. Scratch, scratch, from the direction of the wardrobe. She turned on the bedside lamp. The wardrobe doors were slightly trembling. Nara said her whole body went cold. She forced herself to get up, walked over, and slowly pulled one of the doors open. Inside, crammed into the wooden wardrobe, was Ken. He's a tall guy, about 6 feet, with his head bent at this awful angle against the top of the wardrobe. Shoulders twisted, knees pulled in. His eyes were closed tight, like he was in a deep, painful sleep. And his hands were dragging his nails over the inside of the wardrobe, making that horrible scratching sound. Nara froze. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. Then she yelled his name and shook him hard. He kept saying, "What the hell? What am I doing in there? How did I get there?" She sat him down, handed him a towel, and tried to calm him. When he finally caught his breath, he said he'd been having a nightmare. He said, "There was this woman. She had no eyes, just empty dark holes. She was wearing a white kabaya, like a traditional outfit, and she kept following me. I was running down these narrow hallways, opening door after door, but they all led to smaller and smaller rooms, and she was always right behind me. I finally saw one last door and thought it was the exit, but when I opened it, it was just a tiny dark space. No way out." Nara asked, "And then?" He said, Then I woke up, here, and pointed at the wardrobe. Nara just whispered, "You see? I told you not to make fun of the offerings." But she didn't want to talk about it anymore right then. She helped him clean up, got him some water, and told him they'd deal with it in the morning. The next morning, everyone met up for breakfast by the pool. Almost everyone, anyway. Leo wasn't there. They started eating, and Ken, looking pale and exhausted, told the group what had happened. He described the woman with the hollow eye sockets, the traditional clothes, and the feeling of being herded into that narrow, inescapable space. Nara watched everyone's reactions. A few of them tried to laugh it off, but you could tell they were unsettled. After a while, someone said, "Wait, where's Leo?" They realized no one had seen him yet, so Nara and a couple of others went to his room to check on him. They knocked. No answer. They tried the door. It was unlocked. Leo was inside, lying on the bed, drenched in sweat. His skin was hot to the touch. He had a fever and was breathing like he'd just run a marathon. They tried to get him to drink water. When he could finally talk, he said, in this shaky voice, Did anyone see that woman last night?" Nara felt her stomach drop. "What woman?" she asked, even though she already knew. He said that sometime during the night, he'd woken up and seen a woman in traditional Balinese dress standing outside his window. Messy hair, blank eyes, just staring in at him through the glass. At first he thought it might be some drunk villager or a performer heading home, so he quickly got up and shut the curtains, telling himself he was just imagining things. But later he woke up again. This time the curtains were open, and the woman was inside his room. She was dancing, slowly, her arms and legs bending at strange angles, her fingers moving in those sharp, deliberate gestures you see in Balinese dance, but twisted in a way that didn't look right. Her eyes rolled back and then locked onto him again, empty and cold, as she moved closer and closer to the bed. He said he tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then everything went black, and the next thing he knew, it was morning, and he was burning with fever. At that point, Nara had had enough. She grabbed her phone and called their local tour guide, a Balinese man named Wayan, who'd been showing them around the island. When Wayan heard what happened, he didn't laugh, didn't say it was just a dream. He went very quiet. Then he said, very sharply, "You touched the offerings, didn't you?" Nara admitted what Leo and Ken had done. She expected him to be mildly annoyed. Instead, he was furious. He said, "You cannot do that. It's taboo. Those offerings are sacred. Even if you step on them by accident, you must apologize. If the spirits don't punish you, the villagers might. This is not a joke here." He told them to get ready immediately. No sightseeing, no brunch stop. He picked them up and drove straight to a temple. At the temple, Wayan spoke to one of the priests. The priest listened, then nodded like he'd heard this kind of story before. He didn't seem surprised, just serious. Nara said that as the water ran down her face, she suddenly felt like she might cry. Not from fear, but from this deep, heavy guilt for not standing her ground more when everyone was joking about it. After the ritual, they went back to the villa. That night, there were no more scratching sounds, no women at the window, no strange dreams. Ken's feverish, haunted look faded over the next day. Leo's fever broke. The atmosphere in the group changed. They were quieter, more careful where they stepped, more respectful in general. They finished the trip without any more incidents. Everyone went back home safely. But Nara swears she will never forget that wardrobe, or the look on Ken's face when he woke up inside it, or the way Leo described that woman dancing in his room. So yeah, if you ever go to Bali, or honestly, any place with traditions you don't fully understand, please, be respectful. Those little offerings on the ground, they're not decorations. They're not trash. They mean something to the people there. And maybe to things you can't see, too. You ever find yourself down in Lower Manhattan at night? If you do, I want you to remember this, because once you've heard it, you'll never look at Trinity Church the same way again. So picture this. It's late October, one of those evenings when the air is just cool enough to raise goosebumps, but not so cold you can't pretend you're fine without a jacket. The city noise has settled into that low, distant hum, and the fog from the Hudson creeps in like it's got someplace very specific to be. Right there, where the old cobblestones lead up to the iron gates of Trinity Church, there's a story that refuses to stay buried. Most folks know the history books talk about a famous duel back in 1804. Two powerful men, once colleagues, torn apart by ambition, pride, and politics. In the version you'd read in school, they're called Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But the story I'm telling you, the one that clings to Trinity Church like the autumn mist, in this story, their names are Elias Harrow and Jonathan Brandt. Elias Harrow was the brilliant one, the architect of the young nation's finances, the kind of mind that could see 10 moves ahead of everyone else. Jonathan Brandt was the vice president, charming, calculating, always standing just a step to the side of the spotlight, waiting for his moment. They were allies once, friends even. But ambition is a sharp thing, and over time, it carved a canyon between them that words couldn't bridge. Their quarrels grew louder, the insults sharper, until finally, there was only one way in their world to settle it. At dawn, on a summer morning in 1804, they met with pistols in hand. One walked away. The other was carried to Trinity Church. Elias Harrow was laid to rest there, beneath a marble stone that the weather has tried and failed to erase. The bells tolled for him, and the city moved on. At least, that's what people like to think. But every year, on the last night of October, the church remembers. Locals will tell you, quietly, usually over coffee or a drink, like they're not entirely sure they believe themselves, that if you stand by those iron gates just before midnight, something changes. First, the street lamps along Broadway flicker. Not all at once, just enough to make you check your phone and wonder if there's a power issue. The air grows colder, unnaturally so. You can see your breath even if the weather app swears it's still mild out. Then, the heavy wooden doors of Trinity, those massive old doors that don't move without effort, creak open. No one touches them. No one is there. Inside the yard, where the tombstones lean and the names blur, a low mist begins to rise. It curls up from the ground, threads itself between the graves, and drifts toward the center of the churchyard like it's being pulled by invisible hands. And that's when people say they hear it. Two voices, faint at first. Not quite words, more the shape of anger and regret. They say if you listen closely, you can pick out Elias's voice. Tight, controlled, still trying to reason. And Jonathan's. Sharp and bitter, like every sentence is a wound. Then comes the sound no one ever forgets. The crack of two pistols firing almost at the same time, echoing off the stone walls and stained glass windows. People who've heard it swear there's no mistaking it. It's not a car backfiring, not construction, not fireworks. It's the sound of old gunpowder, of iron and smoke, and choices you can't take back. If you're brave or foolish enough to peer through the gate when that happens, some say you'll see them. Two men, half-shadowed, standing 10 paces apart. Elias Harrow, in a weathered blue coat, his white cravat smeared with a ghostly hint of blood. His hand shaking just slightly as he lifts his pistol. They raise their weapons. The air goes still. Even the city seems to hold its breath. And then, just as quickly as it begins, the scene shatters. The gunshots fade. The figures blur and dissolve back into the mist. You'd think that would be the end of it. But Trinity has one more memory it refuses to let go. After the echoes die away, another sound rolls in. The rattle of wooden wheels on cobblestone. The hollow clop of hooves that never quite touch the ground. A carriage appears at the edge of the fog. Always the same one, they say. A black, old-fashioned hearse carriage, drawn by 4 shadowy horses whose eyes glow faintly in the dark. It pulls up right in front of the gate, as if waiting for permission to enter. Inside the carriage, under a white shroud, lies a body. Elias Harrow. If you look closely, and I don't recommend it, but I know you're going to be curious, you can see the edge of his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the cravat at his throat staying dark where the bullet tore through. The driver sits hunched on the bench, draped in a long coat, a wide-brimmed hat hiding his face. Some people say he has no face at all, just shadow. Others claim they saw their own features staring back at them, empty-eyed. Whoever he is, he always does the same thing. He leans down, as if addressing someone only he can see, and whispers. No one's ever been able to make out the words. A warning, maybe. A confession. A promise. The horses stamp once, twice, and then the whole carriage rolls backward into the fog and disappears, like it was never there. Now, the strange part, and yes, it gets stranger, is what happens to the people who witness it. There was a woman a few years back, a photographer, who thought it'd be fun to get some moody Halloween shots around Trinity. She told a friend later that as soon as she heard the pistols, her camera shut off. Full battery, brand new card, and it just died. Her phone too, black screen, useless. Another guy said his watch stopped for exactly 3 minutes, starting at midnight. When it ticked back to life, the carriage was gone. So were the figures. And in the stained glass windows of the church, where he'd caught the reflection of 2 dueling men just moments before, There was nothing but his own face staring back at him. People report the same things again and again. Devices failing, breath puffing out in white clouds on a night that isn't that cold. The sudden feeling that someone is standing just behind them, close enough that if they turned around, they'd bump shoulders. But when they do turn, there's no one there. And yet, and this is the part that keeps the story alive, every Halloween, someone new goes to stand at that gate. Sometimes it's a couple on a ghost tour who hang back from the group just to see. Sometimes it's a local who's walked past Trinity 1,000 times but finally gives in to curiosity. Sometimes it's someone like you who heard the story from a friend and thought, it can't be that bad, I'll go see for myself. They stand there, hands wrapped around the iron bars, listening. They wait for the deep, distant toll of the clock. They watch the doors. They hold their breath, wondering if this will be the year the duel repeats, if the past will drag itself up from the graves for one more performance. Maybe they'll see nothing at all, just a beautiful old church and a quiet, foggy street. Or maybe, just maybe, they'll hear the faint echo of a pistol, the rattle of invisible wheels, and feel the weight of 2 centuries pressing down on the space between what history recorded and what it refuses to let go. So, let me tell you about this trip we took to Baguio. It was late September, a few years back, when my sister-in-law, Anna, booked us a room at this old hotel along Quezad Road, just a short walk from Burnham Park. She really wanted us to experience the classic side of Baguio. Yung Luma, my character, hindi yung modern and fancy. I already knew the place was old. I'd Googled it beforehand. But I didn't expect this. Heaviness. The moment we stepped inside. The lobby was quiet, almost too quiet, and the hallways leading to our room on the 4th floor were narrow and dimly lit. You know that kind of yellow light that never fully reaches the corners? Parang laging may nakatago sa gilid ng mata mo. When we entered the room, my heart sank a little. It clearly hadn't been updated in years. The curtains were faded, the paint was peeling in some spots. The wooden floor creaked with every small step. Even the building's facade outside looked tired, like it hadn't been repainted in a long time. There were 3 beds, a big window overlooking Burnham Park, and outside the sky was this flat gray. A storm was on its way. Typhoon Ompong was in the forecasts that week, so the whole city felt extra gloomy. We dropped our bags and I went straight to the bathroom. As soon as I closed the door and turned the lock, I felt a sharp sting. Parang tinusok yung daliri ko. I looked down and saw a fresh cut on my finger, deep enough for blood to bead up and start running down. I just stared at it like, ano to? It made no sense. I've used 1,000 door locks in my life, but I'd never cut myself on one. And for it to happen the exact moment we arrived, it didn't feel like an accident. It felt wrong, like something was saying, I'm here. I wrapped it with tissue and went back out. I told my husband Mark and Anna about it, brushed it off with a nervous laugh, then went to open my suitcase. Now this part really bothered me. My luggage had a number lock. I've used the same code since I bought it. I've never changed it. I punched it in, pulled the latch. Nothing. It wouldn't budge. I frowned, tried again, and again. I must have dialed that code 10, 15 times. Still locked. You know that slow, creeping feeling that someone's messing with you? That's exactly what it felt like. A thought slipped in. Maybe it's not just us in this room. Maybe something's playing with us. In the end, I had to force the zipper out of the lock to open the suitcase, and I just snapped. Out loud, I said, half nervous, half annoyed, "Friends, huwag niyo naman kaming pagtripan. Kakadating lang namin." I really meant it. It didn't feel like I was talking to thin air. It felt like I was talking to someone. Mark immediately dismissed it, saying it was all coincidence. Anna agreed, but I could tell they were both a little uneasy. That first night, we decided to sleep with the lights on. It was actually Anna who insisted, and Mark didn't argue. Si Mark kasi, may tinatawag tayong third eye. He's very sensitive, easily startled by energies or presences. So we pushed the beds closer together, and he took the middle bed, like some kind of human buffer. Nothing big happened that night, but all three of us felt it, that sense of being watched. Like eyes were on us from somewhere in the room, or just beyond it. The next morning, the air felt extra cold, and it wasn't just Baguio weather. We needed to leave early, so I volunteered to shower first. I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and started my usual routine. I turned the faucet on to adjust the temperature, then turned it off once I was ready and stepped into the shower. So I'm there, back facing the faucet, eyes closed, lathering shampoo into my hair. And then I hear it, the soft creak of the handle turning. The water suddenly starts running. For a moment, I just stood there, heart pounding, water running behind me. And I could feel that same presence from the day before, that thick, heavy feeling in the air. But the logical side of me fought its way through the fear. I told myself, baka natamaan mo lang ng likod mo. Baka may problema lang sa gripo. So I slowly turned, shut it off again, and kept repeating in my head, don't acknowledge it. Don't acknowledge it. Wala yan. Wala yan. I finished my shower, pretending nothing was wrong. The rest of that day was actually lovely. We roamed around Baguio, ate street food, walked around Session Road, passed by Burnham, enjoyed the cool air. Ang saya namin. For a while, I forgot about the weirdness in that room. We got back to the hotel around 10 p.m., tired and ready to sleep. We turned on the TV for a bit, chatted, then eventually settled in for the night. The lights stayed on again. Now here's the part that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. Around 3 a.m., I woke up. At first, I didn't know why. The room was quiet. My body was heavy, like I'd been yanked out of a deep sleep. I was about to roll over when I heard it. Crying. Very soft at first, muffled, like it was coming from the next room. I lay very still, listening. The sound was faint, but clear enough that I could feel it vibrating through my pillow, through the headboard. Someone, or something, was weeping.
My whole body went rigid. I remembered what the front desk had told us when we checked in, that the room beside ours was empty. I slowly turned my head to check on Anna. She was fast asleep. Then I glanced at Mark. He was already awake, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. In a low voice, he whispered, "Naririnig mo." My eyes widened. "Oh," I whispered back. I wanted so badly to believe it was something normal, so I forced myself to say, "Baka naghihilik lang yung guest sa kabila." Even though I knew there wasn't supposed to be anyone there, I clung to that excuse like a lifeline. Then Mark said quietly, "May humahawak sa braso at paa ko." That's when real terror hit me. I went completely silent. It felt like the air around us thickened. My skin was crawling, but I didn't dare move. He reached up and tapped the headboard above him. It made this hollow, empty sound, like the wall between our room and the other room was very thin. But the crying didn't stop. Whoever or whatever it was just kept sobbing. Not loud, not dramatic. Just this soft, broken crying that went on and on. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the ceiling, pretending not to hear it. Minutes felt like hours. Somewhere between fear and exhaustion, my body finally gave up and pulled me back to sleep. Looking back, I think the only reason I managed to sleep at all was because I kept forcing myself to be logical, to downplay everything, even when my gut was screaming otherwise. The next morning, we checked out and headed back to Manila. Nobody said a word about what happened. The whole bus ride home was quiet. It felt like we'd made this unspoken agreement. If we don't talk about it, maybe it can't follow us. We stayed at Anna's condo in Manila for 2 more nights. On that first night back, when we finally felt safe enough, we broke the silence. Over dinner, one of us joked about the creepy hotel, and suddenly everything came spilling out. Anna admitted she'd felt it too, that sensation of being watched. She said the bathroom made her especially uneasy, like someone was standing just behind her while she brushed her teeth. Then she told us, almost in a whisper, that when she took a bath, she'd heard someone murmuring right behind her ear. Not quite words, just a whisper. Then Mark shared what he'd been keeping mostly to himself. But on that night with the crying, everything changed. As the sobbing seeped through the wall, he said he suddenly sensed her clearly. A woman, a black figure, standing at the foot of our bed, just beyond the circle of light. He didn't see her face, just the outline of a woman, all in shadow. Maybe she was the one we heard crying. I still don't know the history of that particular hotel, but Baguio itself carries so much tragedy. Earthquakes, war, countless stories of loss. When I think about that night, it makes a strange kind of sense that some of that pain might still be lingering in places like that. And yet, Baguio City will always be beautiful to me. Majestic, even, with its cool air, pine trees, rich culture, and breathtaking views. Despite everything we experienced, a part of me still longs to go back someday. But I'm grateful for one thing. Whatever that presence was, it didn't follow us home. Mark told me later it was a good thing we never directly acknowledged it while we were there. Never talked to it, never called it out. Because once you do, once you really notice them, they notice you. So I'll leave you with something my husband said, words that honestly changed how I see things now. Don't wish to see ghosts or spirits. Kasi kapag nasa pinakamababa ka na, dun sila umatake. And after that night in Baguio, I believe him.